All right, I'd like to call to order the Temecula City Council meeting of May 14th, 2024. I do not see Mr. Sylvester Scott from the Baha'i Temple, so we are going to let our city manager do the honors of the invocation, and I will do the flag salute.
Would you please stand? Would you please bow your head with me? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for the city of Temecula, the people, the businesses that reside here in our city. Lord, we lift up all of our first responders today, police and fire, city personnel. Lord, we just ask your protection on each of them as they go about their business and keeping our community safe. And Lord, I pray for wisdom, discernment for this city council, protection for the city staff, making wise decisions and governing the business of the city this evening. And with these things we ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, would you all join me in pledging to the flag of this great nation? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Alexander.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kalfas.
Here.
Councilmember Schwank.
Here.
And Mayor Stewart.
Here. All right, so we have some presentations today. So we'll start off with Matt Peters, Certificate of Recognition for Angeline Miracle Fowler.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, our own Matt Peters is going to go ahead and come on up, and as well as Angeline Miracle Fowler. Welcome, Angeline. And they're going to talk a little bit about this wonderful program, and I'll go ahead and read this certificate as you are walking down with the certificate. The City of Temecula recognizes Angeline Miracle Fowler for launching the Caught with Your Helmet On campaign to positively reinforce kids caught while properly wearing bicycle helmets. Working as a nurse, Angeline noticed numerous incidents where a bicycle helmet could have made a very big difference. The Caught with Your Helmet On campaign is an effort between local business owners, California Highway Patrol, the CAL FIRE Riverside County Fire Department, and the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. When a first responder sees a child or teen wearing a helmet, they will stop and reward them with a gift certificate through the support of a local business. To promote the safety and well-being of riders, Angeline also launched a citywide helmet drive. New helmet donations will be collected until the end of May and then sent to local first responders to be distributed. The City of Temecula is grateful, Angeline, for your contributions to the safety of our local community, and we wish you success in your future endeavors.
Very good. The first time I heard about Angeline was through the newspaper and this program called Caught with Your Helmet On. And I think it's a great program. Angeline deserves a ton of recognition. I'm just going to turn it over to her. It's really her story and her program, so I'll let her go.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. I'm just going to take a minute and take this all in. This program is something that I've dreamt of for like years. Always talking to my husband about it, and something that I really wanted to make a difference. We all get frustrated when we're seeing kids riding without their helmets on, and always talking about it, but we're never doing anything about it. So last July, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna finally do this. And as a pediatric nurse practitioner here in the community, and a resident of Temecula for almost 43 years, I figured this is the perfect place to start this. So as you said, Caught with Your Helmet is helping our first responders reward our kids for safety. So as they're seen out when they're out on patrol and they see a child wearing their helmet, they're gonna stop and give them a reward. So not only are we encouraging our kids to wear their helmets and with positive reinforcement, we're also helping promote continued positive relationships between our first responders and our youth. So I see that definitely as a win-win. Since we launched this July 1st of last year, we have over 40 collaborating businesses that have provided over 4,000 gift certificates to all of our first responders. And as you heard, that's including our Riverside Sheriff, our Highway Patrol, and our Temecula CAL FIRE. We have just recently expanded into the Marietta PD and Marietta Fire as of May 1st, and we have 5 collaborating businesses over there as well. So what we've also done is along with Bike Temecula Valley, which is a collaborating bike coalition, as you guys well know, we have been into 18 elementary schools teaching bicycle safety to our elementary school students. We're also out in front of their schools in the morning, catching the kids wearing their helmet and rewarding them for safety. We participated in 3 walk, bike, and rolls to school this year. We have been at 4 out of the 6 middle schools in Temecula, helping those kids get rewarded for safety. Now, that's a difficult task at a middle school, but we got that done. And with Bike Temecula Valley, we're also going to be at Chaparral High School this Friday, rewarding those kids for safety as well. We've also helped 3 kids that have been in accidents wearing their helmets return back to school and teach their fellow classmates the importance of wearing their helmet and teaching them safety as well. We've also are helping the Temecula School District, along with the Sheriff's Department, launch the upcoming permit program for the next school year. Last holiday, we did complete our first holiday helmet drive, and we collected over 40 helmets that we distributed to all of our first responders. Currently, as mentioned, we are running our Temecula Bike Month helmet drive. We have 24 donation boxes throughout our city and in Marietta, and so far, as of today, we have 42 helmets already collected, and I see 4 beautiful helmets sitting right over there, too. We're also gearing up for this summer, making sure all of our first responders have enough gift certificates to reward those kids for safety, and promoting those for making sure that we have those helmets to those kids that are in need. Cut with Your Helmet On has also been approached by 2 different cities, asking us to expand into their city as well. So that tells us that this has been a very great success. So all of this would not be possible without a big team that I have behind me. I'd like to first thank my husband, Brian. He's a huge part of all of the bicycle safety throughout the program, doing a lot of the helmet donations and also calling on the gift certificates as well. I definitely would not have been able to do this without him, and especially my family. They've been a huge support and tell me to stop dreaming about this and make this finally happen. I'd also like to thank Officer Mike Lastig of the Highway Patrol. When I approached him and talked to him about my vision, he said, definitely, let's make this happen. He gave me all the contact information that I needed and started the program. Also, Deputy Delilah Hernandez. She was told about the Caught with Your Helmet program. She could have said, yeah, that was a great idea, but she really launched it, saw the passion, and actually took it really well throughout the Temecula Riverside Sheriff. Definitely, she has made it what it is today. Also, CAL FIRE, and with their support, and all of their also catching with the kids with their helmet on while they're out in patrol in our community. Bike Temecula Valley, Gary Audie, if you've ever gone to breakfast or coffee with this man, he will sign you up for something. I definitely would not be a program that I am today without Bike Temecula Valley being able to help me in all of their added support. Jeff Kingsburg, thank you so much for helping to launch the youth program and what you've done for us in the schools. And Ernie Castro, believing in us from the very beginning and helping me do everything that I do. Deputy Stom, one of our resource officers, I just cannot say enough great words about her. She has definitely made the Caught with Your Helmet program on in the school district what it is today. And I will tell you guys, as a nurse practitioner, I hear a lot of things that go on. That woman has made a huge difference with our kids in this community. I cannot say enough great things about her. Michelle Bowers and Jason Vickery at the school district to allowing us to come in and make a difference, and definitely Matt Peters. You believed in this program from the very beginning when you heard it, and I greatly appreciate you. And definitely, as I said, it takes a village. I could not have made this program what it is without every single one of you. Thank you.
So you're a perfect example of how one person can make a difference. And it was your vision that created the team. So congratulations, and we appreciate what you've done for our city in this program. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we got another one.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and Angeline is correct. Those 4 helmets absolutely belong in that bin right there on behalf of the council members and the city. So thank you. And the next one, I'm going to call up Matt Peters again so he can go ahead and introduce whoever he needs to and bring up everyone. And we'll go ahead and read the National Bike Month proclamation. Whereas National Bike Month is celebrated every year in the month of May to showcase the many benefits of bicycling. Whereas the bicycle is an economical, healthy, and convenient form of transportation and an excellent tool for recreation and enjoyment of Temecula's scenic beauty. And whereas throughout the month of May, the residents of Temecula and its visitors will experience the joys of bicycling through an online educational program, organized rides, commuting events, or by simply getting out and going for a ride. Whereas creating a bicycle-friendly community has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, growing the economy of Temecula, attracting tourism dollars, improving traffic safety, and reducing pollution and congestion. And whereas Bike Temecula Valley, Old Town Bicycle Company, Pedigo Electric Bikes, The Bike Shop, and other local organizations and businesses will be promoting bicycling during the month of May 2024. And whereas these groups are also promoting bicycle tourism year-round to attract more visitors to enjoy our local parks, restaurants, hotels, retail establishments, and cultural attractions. And whereas these groups are also promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce collisions, injuries, and fatalities, and improve health and safety for everyone on the road. Now, therefore, you, Mayor James Stewart, on behalf of the City of Temecula, hereby proclaim the month of May 2024 to be National Bike Month and urge all residents to join in this very special observance.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for issuing this proclamation. As has been our tradition at the City of Temecula, when we're issuing the Bike Month proclamation, what we've been doing is passing that on to a local bicycle-related business. And these 2 gentlemen next to me are what I would consider pillars of the bicycling community, especially here in Temecula. They're known for supporting the city, local mountain bike teams, and fixing a lot of bikes. So I'd like to introduce Randy and John from the Old Town Bicycle Company as to pass on the proclamation issuing for Bike Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Council members, thank you guys for having us. And I didn't write a speech or anything, but I just wanted to thank you. And we're very, very proud to be part of this community. The cycling infrastructure's gotten a lot better, and I can only see it growing from here. And now at this point of the year, you know, all the high schools are just about done racing for their season, and it's time for them to have fun instead of going to practice every Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday and race on Saturday and Sunday every other week. And, you know, Vail Lake's been a great opportunity for these kids. They're out of the whole Southern California Cycling League, 4 out of 6 races are here at Vail Lake. And that's pretty much from Santa Barbara to the Mexico border. Every school that has a club comes down to Temecula. That's a pretty big deal by the hundreds and maybe, I mean, thousands of kids and parents and campers and all that for the KOA campground. So it's good for infrastructure. You guys are just doing awesome. I'm not charging the city for those 2 bike maintenances either. So thank you for giving us this huge opportunity. You guys are all awesome. Thank you.
So here's the certificate on the behalf of City of Temecula. Thank you. And they're gonna want a photo. All right, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, and now we are on to a presentation regarding fiber optic communication coordination of our traffic signals. Mr. Pat Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce our senior traffic engineer, Nick Milanchilli, and he's going to give you the presentation. But before he does that, I wanted to make a quick plug for an event that's scheduled next Thursday along the lines of bicycling and bicycling safety. An item on your consent calendar this evening is to award a construction contract for the San Gratuitous Creek Trail Margarita Road undercrossing. And we already have a grand opening, or excuse me, not a grand opening, a groundbreaking event scheduled for that project, and that's scheduled for next Thursday at 10 a.m. at Margarita and Winchester Road. So if you're available, we'd be happy to have you out there for that groundbreaking event. And then, so the project that Nick is going to be presenting to you this evening is the fiber optic communications and traffic signal coordination project. Before he does that, I wanted to give a special recognition to Nick for all the effort that he's put into obtaining funding for this project, as well as several other projects that improve our traffic signals, our roadway safety and circulation systems. This latest round of the Highway Safety Improvement Grant Program, Nick was able to secure over $3 million in funding for those projects. So outstanding work done there by Nick on that. And those projects were all in the delivery stages on those projects now. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nick to present the fiber optic project.
Thank you, Pat. Good evening, Mayor and fellow council members. This presentation is on the coordinated signal timing report for the fiber optic communication system upgrade project. A little background and project recap for this project. The city received approximately $1.2 million in federal funding during the Highway Safety Improvement Project, Cycle 7. Quite a bit old, but we finally got this project to the finish line. The purpose of this project was to improve safety and operations on Winchester Road, Rancho California Road, Temecula Parkway, and also 2 intersections on Margarita Road, just north of Temecula Parkway. The goal of the project was also to install fiber optic communications, which would allow us to implement coordination signal timing. You really can't have coordinated signal timing without communications. It just won't work. So fiber optic improvements we installed was conduits, fiber optic cables, CCTV cameras, traffic signal controllers, and also related communication equipment. And as I mentioned, coordinated timing was implemented on Winchester, Rancho Cal, and Temecula Parkway. So I'm going to get into a little coordinated signal timing basics here. I'm going to try to keep it high level, but I think in order to understand the positives and negatives of coordinated signal timing, you kind of need to understand how it's developed. So apologize if it's a little bit too detailed, but if you have questions, I can always answer it at the end. So coordinated signal timing synchronization synchronizes traffic movements and manages the progression of vehicles where uninterrupted flow is desired on the corridor. What that means is we want to push traffic on Rancho Cal, Temecula Parkway, and Winchester Road because traffic is moving basically from one end of the city to the freeway ramps. So coordinated signal timing is based on fixed cycle lengths and offsets. A fixed cycle length is basically the amount of time for every lane or movement to be served at each signal. And offset is the amount of time you offset your signals in a corridor so you can kind of get a green progression. So when we create the cycle offsets, we have to find our pinch points, and those are always at the Caltrans ramps. So we have to coordinate with Caltrans, and I'll get into that a little bit on the next slide. In coordination, when you have a cycle length in your main movement, you can't break that main movement. When we set up the green time for it, you have to keep going. Even if there's no cars kind of coming on that main movement, you have to finish that green. You'll see we do sort of get complaints on side streets. Hey, no one's coming. Why isn't my green coming? It's because we're in coordination. It's a little bit inconvenient, but overall it helps to move traffic in the city. Coordinated timing can be adversely affected by pedestrian crossings. pedestrians usually take the longest time going across our biggest roads, and we need the longest times for pedestrians. However, we don't need the long times for the vehicles, so it's kind of, it eats up all the time on the cycle length. And generally, emergency vehicle preemption, depending when it comes to the intersection, it can cause the timing to kind of go into transition, and it takes several cycles to get back into it. So I apologize to people who go through a signal after an emergency vehicle goes through it. It can be a little hectic, but after 3 cycles, it works itself out. So the timing process for this is our consultant who did the design for the fiber optic also did the coordination timing plans. What they do is they create the timing plans in a software modeling program. It creates a preliminary timing, cycle lengths, offsets, and says how much time is needed for every phase. Once they develop that, we review it, we say that looks good. We have to send it to Caltrans because we are telling Caltrans what they need to do on their signals. We go back and forth. It's always a compromise because Caltrans has a different goal than the city. Caltrans has they want very short cycle lengths, so we always have to convince them to bring them up. We need a lot more times on our intersections since our intersections are much bigger. There's more pedestrian crossings. Caltrans really doesn't have pedestrian crossings. So it's a compromise. Once we get them to agree to it, we develop our timing sheets, which that is one sheet. Every signal has 45 of those sheets, so they're pretty complicated. There's a lot going on there. Once we do that, we implement the timing in the field. We implemented the timing of these corridors back in May of last year, the last few weeks, and we have basically been running it for the past year. And once it's implemented, the consultant, they were out there during that time observing, fine-tuning, making changes on the fly. You can't just take what you get from a computer and throw it out there. There's a lot more to it. And then what they also did is they did something called floating car runs. What that is we get a baseline of what traffic was before we implemented timing, so you can see how good or bad it was, and then you do the floating car runs after the coordination timing. What a floating car run is, you basically have an intern drive up and down the corridor during every peak period doing 10 runs, and you get your baseline, and that tells you how traffic is flowing. It's an old school way of doing it, and that's kind of the way it's still done, but there's newer technologies now. So that's how what the next few slides, you're gonna see all our results, and it's based on all those floating car runs. So on to the results. I know there's a lot of information here. I'm only gonna focus on basically the travel times. We can certainly get into more questions on it as we get through the presentation. I don't mind going back and we can talk it through. So for all the corridors, we are running 4 coordination plans: an AM, which is from 6:30 in the morning to 10 a.m., a midday, which is from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then a PM plan, which is from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then we also have a weekend plan. We're basically running that from 10 in the morning to 7 p.m. The Winchester Road corridor, we're basically coordinating from Diaz to Nicholas Road. And as you can see, the results are pretty good for this corridor. In the eastbound direction, the AM is 1% better than what it was, but we had dramatic improvements in the midday and PM. I can't really read it, I've got bad eyes here, but about 32%, 33%. And then in the westbound, it was around 20 to 16%, depending on the time of day. And the timing improves is basically correlated to the amount of stops. So we've reduced the amount of stops, and that allows cars to get through there. And by doing that, your speeds get to better flows on the corridor. So speeds are increasing, but not to a dangerous level. They're going to a level that they should be on that road. So good results here. You got to balance out. There are some bad items. 2 corridors, which we do get complaints, and we're trying to fine tune them at all times, is Jefferson and Winchester Road. That was a problem before coordination. It's still a problem now. It seems like when we look at Google Maps and you can see the backup, it's a little bit better, but really what this is just an oversaturation of vehicles. Everyone coming out the freeway, when it's backed up, they're cutting through downtown. going down Jefferson, and they are just impacting that movement, the northbound movement there. Hard to deal with when it's an intersection just oversaturated. There's not much time. When you're in coordination, it's just going to be kind of stuck. Another one we have issues with is Rorapah Road. That's right in front of the high school there. And during the AM drop-off for the school and PM pickup, there's a lot of pedestrian action going across that road. That's eating up a lot of time. And so what happens is the side streets can get shorted sometimes, and it just kind of puts the signal in transition, and it eats up time over several cycles. We do have ideas on how to fix them. We're going to be kind of working on that, testing it out. But it kind of is what it is, and what we may do is take away time from the main movement, make it a little bit less, I would say, better with less throughput in order to serve the side streets more. Rancho California Road, this one performed the best. We have dramatic improvements, 45% to 62% in the eastbound direction, and then about 42 to 54% in the westbound. This quarter, we studied it from Business Park to Butterfield Stage. We ended up only coordinating Jefferson to Margarita. The outside signals were too far, so there's no point to coordinate it. You would hold up traffic on the side streets, so we just said we shortened it, and it gets people to where they need to go in a good time frame still. When we first implemented this, we had a lot of complaints for several months at 3 specific intersections, Rendezvous, Humber, and Yukon. Those served residential side streets. They were getting cut off, a lot of waiting, especially in the midday where not that much traffic on Rancho Cal, they were waiting. We did fix it. Our complaints have really dropped. We really don't get complaints in there anymore. What we actually did was lower the cycle time, which hard to do, but we were able to do it for those 3 specific intersections. And our consultant did that. And then the last corridor is Temecula Parkway, coordinated from La Paz to Butterfield Stage Road. Improvements here, 20% to 30% in the eastbound, and about 7 to 34% depending on time on the westbound. Generally, we haven't had complaints until recently. We're getting complaints at Bedford and La Paz. We met Caltrans out there the other week, and I think we figured out actually today what the issue is. So we have a game plan on how to fix that. So we're gonna, over the next month, we're gonna work with Caltrans to fix their stuff and our stuff, and hopefully it fix it. Basically what's happening is people are getting through La Paz and hitting a red light at Bedford, and that's stacking everything up. So generally, coordination is working pretty well, in my opinion, but I don't drive here every day, so I know everyone else may have a different opinion. I mentioned this in the report. Coordination complaints and issues, typically residential side streets, they can take longer to get on the roadway, but once they get on the roadway, they should be hitting a lot more greens and should be a less frustrating drive. That's what I've experienced driving through these corridors, is there is a lot less stop and go. There is a lot more, you're getting through 3 or 4 green lights. At least that's been my experience. And then a lot of times you do get left turn complaints. Left turns can get cut off because you just can't give them a lot of time. There's just not enough time in that cycle to give them to serve every left turn. It's an unfortunate consequence of it, but it's usually a problem really when you get to the peak traffic at a signal. Some next steps, we're just going to continue to monitor coordination timing and fine tune. It's not a set it and forget it. We constantly have to look at it. We look at it every day, just bringing it up, making sure it's working. We have a traffic management software that helps us refine it. We're constantly learning that software, so only improvements are going to be made. And other considerations for future coordination are Pechanga Parkway and Inez Road. We're looking at doing those as well. And with that, I can open this up to any questions.
All right, any questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thanks for the presentation, Nick. There's a saying, I think, in the public works traffic world that everybody thinks they're a traffic engineer. Mm-hmm. Maybe after all this data, they'll actually believe that. So much work goes into this, so I thank you for the time and energy you put into it. How do you feel like the Smart Freeway project's going to impact some of this stuff, like once that gets up and running? Because it'll be potentially holding some traffic off the freeway.
I'm definitely worried about it, but that's why we have our before results. Right before they implement it, I plan on doing more floating car results and seeing where we are, and then see what their impacts are going to be towards us. I do worry. I don't know how they can hold cars there, but we're going to monitor it and see, and then work with Caltrans and make sure we can improve it. I'm hoping they don't hold them as long as they think they're going to hold them, but the French Valley project, I think, is really going to improve a lot on that freeway, so it may just be a problem that may not occur.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's so much in play right now with the projects we have going that we don't even really know how it's gonna be, so. Two things, and not a really question, but just comments, if that's okay. The left turns, I know that's always a problem. I'll stop complaining about the left turns now that I fully understand how the system works.
It is good to know, though. We
It
need
is.
those complaints so we know how to improve it. When
Yeah.
we don't get the complaint, we think everything's perfectly running, so it does help to get the feedback.
It does, and essentially you're kind of taking one for the team as that main line's moving through, you're waiting just a little bit longer to make that turn.
Yep.
And then the comment about the kids walking, and I always think, while it messes up the intersection, can we imagine if the 500 or so kids that are walking to school were in cars, it would be exponentially worse. So try to always think about it from that perspective too. So thanks, Nick, appreciate
Absolutely.
Any other questions? I just have a couple comments. So that's one of the, other than the freeway, I get complaints about the lights. And they say, you guys aren't doing anything about it. And it's like, we just spent $1.2 million doing this. And I tell everybody, if you really want to experience a coordinated signal, stop by Winchester at 10 o'clock at night, because it's all red or it's all green. It literally, you can see the coordination, but every time there's a pedestrian that crosses, that's like a 32-second signal offset that screws up everything going up. So that's why Winchester is especially bad, because we have the mall right there, and everybody's getting a car repaired on one side and going to the mall to wait. So we have a lot of pedestrian traffic on Winchester. So that's primarily the reason, and I think that's why you see the numbers the way you do. It's improved, but it's probably still one of the worst roads to try to get up and down. But so thank you for all you guys do, and let it be known we're doing something about it. So thank you.
Sure.
All right. You're good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, so we got the board and commission reports. Let's start with community services and Mr. Jeff Kingsburg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Greetings, everyone. I'm proud to represent our commission and council, as always, and also pleased to be a member of Bike Temecula Valley tonight, and certainly want just to ditto and thank the city for recognizing National Bike Month and the work of Angela Miracle Fowler and Old Town Bicycle Company. So as far as our commission goes, you can see on our photos from left to right, we have Commissioner Ernie Castro, we have Commissioner Dr. Juan Hawks, who's serving as vice chair, myself, Jeff Kingsburg, serving as chair, and we have Commissioner Gary Oddie, and then to the far right is Commissioner Catherine Sizemore. And again, our goal in sum is to support the Temecula Community Services Department and promote people, parks, and programs within our city. Our last meeting was actually last night on May 13th. So we met here in the chambers. And as you can see, our recap is we received public comment from the Temecula Sister City Association Chair, Richard Scott, who shared an update about exchanges and hosting opportunity coming up from Dyson, Japan. We also received and filed a presentation on the proposed capital improvement program projects for fiscal years 2025-29. There were 11 different programs that were shared by Community Services Manager Mike Wooten, and I know one of those tying into tonight are some bike lanes off of Butterfield Stage Road, some rather lengthy bike lanes, so that's exciting for the active transportation and quality of life in our community. We also approved our action minutes from our previous meeting of April 8th. The vote was 4-0 with Commissioner Oddie absent. And we will meet again next month on June 10th, 2024. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to Traffic Safety Commission, and Mr. David Maddox.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council, and happy Bike Month to everyone. The Traffic Safety Commission meets on the fourth Thursday of every month to discuss topics related to traffic, bicycle, and pedestrian safety. Your commissioners are Eric Ackerman, Skip Carter, J.R. Richardson, Vice Chair Brad Sullivan, and myself. At our last meeting, we heard public comment and approved our action minutes. And then, next slide. Yep, next after that, we received a report on the capital improvement program. And this was an abridged version of the full presentation that was given at the City Council budget workshop last week. The CIP includes over $900 million worth of projects. And I think it's important to point out for some perspective on that, 7 years ago, when Director Thomas became our Public Works Director, he inherited a CIP that was about $350 million. And so that program has just grown tremendously under his tenure. We're finding a lot of success with the grant funding, as you heard. And it's also, in part, a reflection on the quality of our project design and selection and the city's track record now, being able to deliver these projects. Next, we reviewed a multi-way stop warrant analysis for an intersection in Harveston behind Barnett Elementary School. And the 3-0 vote there is reflecting a recommendation to actually maintain the current conditions. The study showed that there were very low traffic volumes there, and there just wasn't really a safe way that we could implement a crosswalk at that particular T intersection. All right, next we reviewed plans to bring the traffic signal timing coordination program to Pechanga Parkway. And just a moment ago, you heard about the many benefits that that entails. We will need to ask our neighbors for a little bit of patience and grace as we dial in the timing of that. I think as we've all learned from Nick's presentation, signal coordination is an extremely intricate engineering problem that requires some iteration and testing. And so you may see some strange signal behavior throughout the summer, but it's definitely going to be well worth the wait once we have that implemented. And then for our last item, we have a list of intersections that we'd like to study as potential locations for future traffic signals. We've got it narrowed down to half a dozen areas, including a couple in front of TVHS and Great Oak High School, where we currently have crosswalks illuminated by rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And with that, those are all the updates I have for you this month, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. No questions? All right. So we'll move on to the public safety report with Captain Chris Durham.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, City team, and residents of Temecula. Your deputies in the month of April for 2024 responded to 5,792 calls for service. It's roughly 193 calls today. Year to date, that's a little over 22,000, and our numbers are in slight decline of last year, which I spoke about predominantly due to the rain. Next slide, please. Speaking of calls for service, this is one that I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying hard. So parents, please don't let your kids ride their e-motorcycles in town. Please don't buy them for your kid as well, because there's no place for them to ride in the city of Temecula. And what I'm trying to avoid is not only these juveniles catching a court case, but also the impound fees, things of that nature. So if you're a resident and you see your neighbors riding these bikes and you don't feel comfortable enough with talking to the parents, you can email me. My email's on the website, and I will send a deputy to go make friends to educate them before their bike is on a flatbed tow truck and before someone gets hurt. So that ends my public safety report. Is there any questions?
Questions?
Thank you.
No? Thank you, sir. All right. We have public comments up. Do we have any public comments?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have 8 public comments on non-agendized items, and then we also have 2 public comments on consent calendar, item number 6. We will start with non-agendized items. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Additional rules are printed in the agenda packet. First speaker is Mark Swearingen, to be followed by Rio Robles Richard.
Good evening, City Council. I'm trying to give you an update on my continuing issue with the soccer allocation fields, but I'm going to drop that for a minute and go to a sub-issue and report that the city has tried to do something about the balls going in from Field 4 into Wolf Creek Drive. I even talked to the Traffic Safety Commission about that. So what I believe is the city's trying to do and trying to understand that it is a liability. It's a lawyer's dream to have what's going on over there at the at Wolf Creek Drive and Birdsall Park, with balls going into the road. So the city's updated and said, hey, look here, we're going to put these shrubs in, and that's going to solve your issue. And I don't think so, okay? Take a look at that. Birdsall has been there since I've been there. And I got here in 95, well, Birdsall's been there since 2006. The existing shrubbery is about 19 inches in most places, okay? You're gonna stop a ball with the 19-inch hedge that is currently 10 inches? It's not gonna work. It's a bad idea. So let's have everybody raise their hands of whose idea, get your credit, because somebody's taking credit for this, okay? That's my issue on that. So why is it that you can't do it? Councilman Schwenk said we can't put a fence around there because of aesthetics. Take a look at the duck pond, where everybody that comes into the city looks at the duck pond. What's around the duck pond? A fence. The aesthetics are fine. It's the same exact fence that is over at Birdsall, except Birdsall's 3 high, and this is only 2. Does that look like it's incredibly bad looking to you? So instead of taking care of kids, and I'm glad the traffic safety and the bike safety are here, that they want to have kids safe. I want to have kids safe. I don't want to have kids driving into kids on bikes on Wolf Creek Drive because you won't move the adult league to Field 1. So here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that you believe that the priority are these guys over kids and over moving the adult league, okay? So let's work on something. Councilman Schwank, you are the parks person. You're the president. And I'll talk later about why this stuff gets stopped because of you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rio Robles Richmond, to be followed by Ashley Melvin.
Good evening, council members. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I agree with the gentleman and the problem that has been happening at Birdsall with balls flying around. I actually had a meeting with some of the city members, staff this week, and we came up with a solution to simply do a switch and move the adult league to Field 3, which would completely eliminate the balls going into the parking lot. And if there is any further changes that need to take place, we would be glad to be part of it to help continue focusing on the safety of all the children and adults. Having said that, I'm here as a representative, as a member of the Temecula Adult Soccer League that has been in existence over 16 years, playing at Birdsall with a constituency of about 1,000 to 1,200 people, with kids from 18 years old to 80, 85 plus. And we have representatives from about 57 to 65 different nations around the world that love the game. And as you know, the World Cup is coming back. You know, Messi has moved to America. You know, the MLS has blown up, and we love this game. It's not going anywhere. And so we're really thankful to you and to the previous members of the board to allow us to have a chance to play soccer in Temecula for adults. Is just a friendly league that creates a huge network of friends, again, from people from all over the world, and we're absolutely thankful and grateful for this opportunity. And I just want to mention, because I think it's a good idea, you know, there's people from China, Korea, India, Belgium, Russia, Chile, Brazil, the UK, Turkey, Greece, from all over the world, and you'll find them there. We're about only a few hours a night there, particularly Sunday nights when there's not a whole lot going on, and 3 other nights. But as the gentleman was saying, it is important to keep the safety, and I think there are some quick solutions to this problem that will bring safety to everybody. So again, thank you so much on behalf of a lot of the foreigners. My accent is from Costa Rica, by the way. I've lived here for almost 30 years and love Temecula very much. And the opportunity of getting our stress and all our problems forgotten for a few hours when we go out there and play. So really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ashley Melvin, to be followed by Richard Scott.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I'm also speaking on behalf of Temecula Soccer Club, which I always get emotional because it's my outing. It's to have this has been such a special gift for me, for my family. We've been here since '89, and I was part of the first Temecula Soccer Club ever in Temecula. And so I've grown up here, and being able to have something that's active and that's an outlet for me to have my sons look up to. It's nice, because if we didn't have that, we would have nothing, and they couldn't look up to us. So sorry, I'm so emotional. I get emotional when I speak. But I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to let us play out here in Temecula. It's such a gift, especially at Birdsall, where my son goes to Great Oak. And he can just walk over, and his friends can come, and his friends can actually, now that he's 18, he can be a part of the league now, and he can play with me. And that's a blessing in itself as well. And so for us to have that opportunity is just so immenseful and uplifting for our youth too. So to our youth to be able to see us as adults, they go, oh, I don't have to stop here. I can keep going. It's such an awesome thing to have. So I'll make it short and sweet. I just really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to let us be able to play out here in Temecula, especially for Temecula Adult Soccer League.
Thank you, Ms. Melvin. The next speaker is Richard Scott, to be followed by Laurel Lamont.
I think that's good enough. Okay, good evening, Mayor Stewart, Deputy Mayor, or Mayor Pro Tem Kalfas, and council members. My name is Richard Scott, and I am the president or the chairperson of the Temecula Sister City Association. And I'm here this evening to drum up host families, because we are expecting 6 students and 3 adults coming from Dyson in the end of July. And we've been recruiting since February, and we still have openings for 2 more families to host male students, and we have 2 adults still needing a home to stay in. So I know Mayor Stewart and former Mayor Schwank are going, and Mr. Hawkins is going to Dyson, or they are going to Dyson end of May, 1st of June. And I know that you will have a special experience there. I went with Stu in 2019, and we shared fabulous cultural understanding and experiences then. So We've had 30 years of a relationship with the city of Dyson, Japan. We are celebrating, first of all, with our delegation going in June. Then students from Dyson are coming here in the end of July. In beginning of December, end of November, another adult delegation from Dyson will be coming here. So we'll be recruiting host families then again for hosting. And all of these events are to celebrate the 30 years of our relationship as sister cities. Hopefully, we'll be able to also organize a student visit there spring break of 2025. So that's our goal, to have those 4 celebrations throughout the year that are chances for citizens of Temecula to meet and get to know and make friends with citizens of Dyson, Japan. So I think that's, so volunteers, do you have any questions, anyone? Nope. Okay, and any volunteers?
Raise your hands.
Okay, well, yeah. Here's a picture that you might be interested in from 2019 of Stu's car and some of the visitors from Dyson. And cultural exchange, here's a picture of that we just got this week. This is the Cherry Blossom Festival celebration in Dyson. And the plaque there, well, there is, that's a Dyson Hill in it's Temecula Hill in Dyson.
Right.
And that's an area that they have dedicated to remembering us. Anyway, so that'll be it for my presentations. Thank you. You are receiving several of these
Thank you,
flyers.
Mr. Scott. Your time is up. We
My
will make
email's on the
sure.
bottom, so if you have
We will
anybody
make
that's
sure, sir,
interested,
that you get, that the
contact me.
flyer gets to the city council. And if there are any volunteers that we are made aware of, we will make sure we get
And
that contact
Isabel
information. to you.
has a link also to this flyer.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Laurel Lamont, to be followed by Melissa Brubanet.
Hi. I guess we all know by now that my lease is coming to a close, okay? I make $52,000 a year. I work full-time. I'm a single mom. No child support, no alimony, just the money I make at Trader Joe's. You have an opportunity to do and to back up your words, that is, you're doing everything you can to advocate for the local workforce and for the tenants in affordable housing. Luke, I got the email. It feels good. I mean, it sounded good. I'm hoping that you will enforce the low-income HUD numbers, which state 65,600. Should it bounce back to you? I know we punted the ball back to warehouse at Creekside and the owner. Now that owner has fallen short on its commitment to that agreement. It has charged tenants illegally for fees. It has bullied tenants. And we have done nothing to enforce that regulation. But we are going to allow them to kick me out. I've been here 6 years, 6+ years, bringing this to the forefront. What have we done to get ahead of this ball? What are you going to do now that the ball's in your court? Because you can take action. You can make a difference. And I'd like to get up here and say thank you. Please give me a good reason to come back here and thank you. Luke, please. I do want to thank you publicly. I do. Let me keep the roof over my head and keep working to save some money. And I'd cordially invite you to the town hall to keep talking about workforce housing. June 2nd at noon. Thank you.
The next speaker is Melissa Bourbonnais, to be followed by Rachel Dennis.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bourbonnais, and I am here with Upward Community on behalf of the local workforce. Luke, that was a good email. I liked it. I liked you throwing the ball back into the property owner's court. But the truth is, the city has a regulatory agreement with Warehouse. You can't just wash your hands of that agreement. You just can't wash your hands of responsibility. In part, the agreement says that the city can, in the event of a violation of any of developers' obligations, it says that the city can take action. The city may revoke any land use entitlement, building permit, certificate of occupancy. I'm sure you know the verbiage. So you can't just walk away. You can't say, oh, it's on you, we're out of this. You can't do that because you took the money and you were like, yeah, we're gonna build affordable housing for the workforce, even though it didn't really pan out that way, but that's what you said you were going to do. The city also cannot, despite the wording of the regulatory agreement, the city cannot negate state definitions, cannot negate county HUD and what it says low income is. And I'm sure you know that, and if not, I'm sure Peter can substantiate it. Councilmember Schwank, you've talked a lot since I've been coming here for 4 years about relationship building. Mayor Stewart, you have said repeatedly that the city is doing everything that it can to help the workforce, that it values the workforce. Councilmember Alexander, you talk a lot about Jesus, and I appreciate that, and the babies, and the single moms, and those that need help, and we're supposed to help our community and help one another. That's very biblically grounded. There's not a whole lot the city can do, I understand that. It can't just magically pull up billions of dollars and hand out houses. We've never asked, we've never suggested that the city do anything like that. We're very much grounded in fact, and that's important to us. And the fact is, there's an opportunity right now for all of you to follow through on your words about Jesus and the babies, your words about valuing the workforce, and your words about relationship building. If you don't have action to substantiate your words, then I'm sorry, but it's just, I can't curse, right? Lies. It's just lies. If you're not following through with those statements with action. So let's get behind doing the right thing.
The next speaker is Rachel Dennis, to be followed by Corey Robinson.
Hi, my name is Rachel. Thank you for having me here. I wanted to start off by saying I was a little bit confused with the proclamation reading earlier. Although nice, I thought proclamations had been pushed down out of these chambers because they take up too much valuable time, and we don't want to lift up one group above the other, so I was confused with that. There are more valuable things that could be spoken about in these chambers, and I am here about the housing issue, the housing crisis that Temecula is facing and across our nation. I have known Laurel for about 1.5 years, and I have to say I've been shocked at what she has to go through, and that's just one story that I'm hearing. I was a single mother myself, and I shared a room with my daughter for 5 years. However, I had a family to help, to bring me groceries and things like that. So I was able, back then as well, to afford living on my own with my daughter. As we know also, we can see rent prices and housing prices have increased far above what pay rates have. One thing that Laurel forgot to mention was it's not only a house over her head, it's her son as well. I am a Christian, and I know that there are several Christians that sit in seats of power in the cities around here. Morally, Christianity aside, faith aside, morally, we have a responsibility to help people in need. But especially as Christian people, we should be helping. I'd like to read a verse. Verses get read often in these chambers. This is in Ezekiel. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor or the needy. They were haughty, and they did detestable things before me. Therefore I did away with them, as you have seen. Another Bible verse is, those who know the good they ought to do and don't do it are sinning. And I believe many of you know the good you ought to do in this case. Thank you.
The next speaker is Corey Robinson, to be followed by our last speaker, Hannon Rickard.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Corey Robinson. I've recently moved out of the community to live in Menifee because I couldn't find anything affordable in the area. I also work at Trader Joe's, and I am a bike enthusiast, but I can't cycle to work right now. I just hope that there's a solution in the future. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And the last speaker is Hannon Rickard.
Well, actually, I have to say, my sister is trying to move to Temecula, but it is pretty expensive, so she's like having to try to find a place in Menifee. And she did find a place. But it's kind of high. It's kind of steep. Rent's like, I forgot, it's like $3,000 or something. 3 bedrooms. It is kind of high. But you know, I'm praying that the Lord would work this out. And I think what I want to bring up is a root issue, and I think everyone's kind of alluding to it, that contributes to solving problems or vice versa. And I, you know, I've been always trying to harp on it every time I come here. But it's the ultimate line is we all need we all individually, not just you, but even more so the public, we need to be in right relationship with God. That there's a powerful verse that I want to read. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. 2 Chronicles 7:14. It says, "If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves," that's the Christians. Those of us who believe in God, who profess Him. He says, if those people will humble themselves. Humility, by the way, is the opposite of pride. Pride, I can't find a word anywhere in the Bible where pride is ever used in a good favor, in a good light. It's always negative. God gives grace to the humble, but He resists the proud. I think that's something even the modern church in America has lost sight of. We even say things like, I'm proud to be American. I think that we should just pray about that and maybe ask the Lord to reveal to us, maybe there's a better word we can use, like I'm humbled or thankful to be in America. But now that might be questioned due to a lot of evil that I see that we're going in this nation. But hopefully it says, if my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, He says, God Himself says, then I will hear. Then I will hear from heaven. If we will do those 4 things, and He says, my people, you all don't have to believe in God if you don't want to. God's talking to those who profess Him. If we will do those 4 things, God says, then I will do the 3. Only then will I do the 3. If my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. He's talking to me. He says, then I will hear from heaven, then I will forgive their sin, and then I will heal their land. Only God can make America great again. Thank you all. God bless you.
And the last speaker, which will also take up our 30 minutes for public comments, is Alicia Gregory.
Hello, everyone. I had zero intent on speaking today. I was just here supporting my high school student and bring in my laptop because I'm coming straight in for work. And then I heard a few people speaking on housing, affordable housing in our community. And I actually happen to have a piece of paper full of affordable housing resources because I am a local real estate agent, property manager that specializes in housing for vulnerable communities. I've lived here about 13 years. I've checked in at the city often about like our IHOT, mental health services, housing, subsidies, those things. And I happen to have a host of resources for affordable housing throughout Inland Empire and Temecula, Marietta, so I don't know if these groups that are here are familiar with how much affordable housing is in the plans, currently under construction, currently accepting applications, but connect with me after the meeting, and I actually accidentally came super prepared. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes public comments under non-agendized items. When we get to the consent calendar, we do have 2 public comments on the consent calendar.
Okay, so let's go to council reports. Anybody have a council report? Go.
Sure, I can go first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one quick slide. It's for Culture Fest, if we could throw up the slide really quick. So this Saturday, May 18th, from 10 to 3 is the 3rd annual Culture Fest right here in Town Square Park. I will encourage everyone to come out and enjoy the festivities and the event. I want to say thanks to the TCSD folks and for always just putting on a wonderful event, and then the community for embracing it and coming out and supporting events like this, and then Ready Commission for overseeing these events. So come out and enjoy everything Temecula has to offer this Saturday. Thank you.
Awesome. Do you have anything?
I do have one.
Okay, go for it.
I just have one slide here. Let's see if we got it. On Sunday, June 2nd at noon, I will be hosting a town hall meeting right across the hallway here at our conference center. I know Temecula has done a lot of affordable housing work in the House, or in the past. We currently are doing a lot, and we will continue to do a lot, but we're always looking for new solutions. And the reason I held this on a Sunday is because the workforce a lot of times works during the week. So I put it on a Sunday at noon. Feel free to come, tell your friends, tell your family. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas. And really, it's just a gathering of the workforce, and we are looking forward to seeing you there. That's all I got. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Ms. Alexander?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I've got 3 quick slides. It was a busy couple weeks. We'll first start out with Jacob's House, where I was at today. I just want to thank the staff and also the volunteers for showing me around. And I love the fact that they call this a home of refuge. And I just want to tell everybody that, if you know of somebody or find a situation where maybe if somebody from out of the area has a family member in the hospital, this place actually will serve the family that is within a 25-mile radius outside of that hospital to have a place to stay. They have everything that is needed. It's a beautiful home. And so I just want to thank all of them for the opportunity just for me to see exactly what they're doing here in our city. And it's just a wonderful organization. So if you're looking to volunteer, they're definitely always needing help. So that's one of them. Next slide, please. I also this weekend had an opportunity for the first time to go to the flower show of 2024. I can tell you right now, I have a black thumb and kill any plant that I ever touch. And so I made sure not to touch them, but they were absolutely gorgeous. And I just got to see a lot of creativity. The Temecula Valley Garden Club, I got an entire tour of this extravagant contest that went on. So it goes on biannually. And also they have a club, so they're always looking for people to join that are really interested in gardening and agriculture, to be able to just kind of show that off. So again, this was very new to me, but I'm very impressed that people come all throughout the valley to be able to do this. So thank you to this club and this group. The last one was from All From the Heart, another nonprofit. This one I just fell in love with. This is actually called Wheels for Warriors. I'm just going to read a little bit of their mission. It says, the mission of Wheels for Warriors is to provide independence by gifting power wheelchairs and scooters to assist any veteran, which in turn allows our veterans the freedom to live life more freely. We do this by accepting donations of powered wheelchairs and scooters, which we then refurbish to the finest quality and place them in the needs of these individuals. Wheels for Warriors have currently gifted over 400 power wheelchairs to date to the needs of, and it's still growing. I just want to thank this organization because not only did they provide 2 wheelchairs for these wounded vets, which obviously being a vet myself meant a lot, but also they had tons of families, as we can see, I think, nope, it's not in this one, but they had tons of families of Gold Star families, and all of those gifts actually went to the kids and the families, and each kid walked out of there with a brand new bike and helmet. So I was really impressed with all they did and just very thankful for what they're doing for our vets in the community. So hats off to them. Thank you.
All right, so I have 2 things also. Let's start with the housing slide. If we could do that one first. Okay, so here is another affordable housing project that the city of Temecula invested heavily in. We spent $10.1 million building these 77, not building, we didn't build it. An actual investment group built this, but we invested $10.1 million into this project to provide affordable housing. So for people to say that we don't care about workforce, we do, obviously. We've got many projects just like this all over the city. So we have a ribbon cutting on June 11th at 10 a.m. So anybody who wants to see what these units look like, please come. And you'll get to actually see, these are beautiful places too. So we do care. So, and then I have my newest Cruising with Stu video, and we're gonna go into it right now. Tori from the Sunset Market.
Stu, Mayor of Temecula.
Come cruise with me. So how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good.
You know, the goal was to bring people down to Old Town during the week.
Right.
And to find a place to highlight artisan vendors.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things about the Sunset Market, we have food. We always have either live music or a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
But all of our vendors are handcrafted vendors.
It's a cool event. I'm really hoping that as time goes on, we become that place you want to go on a Wednesday night and experience like I said, a beautiful night at Temecula. I mean, it really does add another flavor to Old Town, you know?
Definitely. And one of my favorite parts about the market is just the sense of community.
Yeah.
When you come and spend an evening here and you see people out dancing on the lawn and, you know, playing with their kids and wandering through and eating and all of that, it's just, it's really fun.
Yeah.
So the market is every second and fourth Wednesday from February through November, 5 to 9 p.m., always right here in front of City Hall. With the exception, this year we're going to actually do one Saturday market. Our last market of the year, our holiday market, will be Saturday, November 30th from 2 to 6 p.m.
All right, so talk to me about the vendors.
About the vendors, we have some of the most amazing vendors. So like I said before, everything here is handmade. So every one of these artisans is making what they sell, from kids' clothes to candles to my bookseller. I've got a vendor down here that is an aromatherapist and makes her own essential oils. So just really cool things. And they're always changing. So we have some of our permanent vendors that are here all the time, but you're always going to find something new and exciting here.
Well, thank you, Tori, for showing me the Sunset Market. I've been here a couple of times, but we'll show the rest of the city that this is the place to hang out on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday nights of the month between 5 and 9
9
p.m. So come on down to the Sunset Market. As you can see, the sun is beautiful and setting as we speak. And thank you for cruising with Stu. All right, and I did want to make a correction. When I said investors, an investment group, it was actually a nonprofit that we contributed to build that unit, low-cost housing. So, all right, so now we're moving on to consent calendar. So do we want to do our speakers now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, let's go ahead and have our speakers come up now. We have 2 speakers on item number 6 and 1 speaker under item number 11. Each speaker does have 3 minutes. The first speaker is Mark Letourneau, to be followed by Louis Todd.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, City staff. Thank you for the opportunity to share my safety concerns regarding plans to install a traffic circle at the corner of Yanez de Portola Road and Jedediah Smith Road. About half a mile away is another traffic circle on Yanez at La Paz, which has been the site of too many accidents, apparently due to poor planning and construction. Now, without fixing that traffic circle, it appears the city is rushing forward to install another traffic circle, and we're greatly concerned. My family and I are one of 4 families of property owners directly affected by the installation, and although we have lived there since 2015, no one has approached us to ask questions or inquire of our concerns. Additionally, the 45-mile-an-hour posted speed limit allows traffic to move way too quickly through that corridor. At least the 4-way stop sign gives us a sporting chance when pulling out of our driveway or into the driveway, which is only about 60 feet from that intersection. My 94-year-old father-in-law has been lucky so far, but it may be only a matter of time until an inattentive driver driving way too fast hits him or one of us. Last year in April, a speeding driver crashed through our fence and their car ended up in our front yard. So I know what can happen at that intersection. So I have a couple of questions. How will pedestrian and equestrian traffic cross that intersection? How can we reduce the posted speed limit? How come no one has approached us for our concerns? And how much land will I be forced to give to this project? How can we improve the safety? I ask you to delay your decision on funding until we can have some answers to these and other questions. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker is Louis Todd, to be followed by the last speaker, Joe Wilson.
Mayor Stu, council members, it was about 11 months ago I stood here and spoke to you about safety in our neighborhood. My wife and I moved to Temecula in 1986 before the city was a city. We live on De Portola, and we talked about the fact that the speed limit was set too high in front of our residential properties. Each one of you commented afterwards that you heard what we talked about. And now we just learned that the solution is to put a second roundabout in our neighborhood. Look at the first roundabout. So I looked up what roundabouts really do, right? And they're not about safety. They're about moving traffic. And the reason it's about moving traffic is because the decisions that are made by the city engineers on Temecula Parkway by adding different traffic signals and now this new cycled time is telling people to cut through our neighborhood. So the traffic has increased dramatically, and they're doing the speed limit, 45 miles an hour. Not one of you, again, would raise your hand and say, I I would stand next to you and increase the speed limit in my neighborhood to 45 miles an hour. It's dangerous to go in and out of your driveway. So roundabouts are about flow, improving flow, less congestion, but it ignores the folks that live there, right? The current roundabout has been a success if you want to increase traffic accidents. It's a success if you want to increase cut-through traffic through a residential neighborhood. Where is the crosswalk? Would any of you dare to try to walk across the crosswalk now at La Paz? It's a crosswalk to nowhere. I watched a bicycle rider drive right into the center of the roundabout to avoid getting hit just 2 weeks ago. And let's not forget the proposal talks about the proposal is to maintain the natural beauty of our neighborhood. So what does the current roundabout look like? Somebody mowed down our horse, right? And now you have plastic K-rail up there. And you want to call that beautiful? That's the proposal that the city is making to help us? That's not what you guys told us that you would do. I would ask that you delay making any decisions to approve this $1.45 million project, to take a look at it. Nobody called me, nobody called my family. We found about this just by happenstance. That's why we don't have a lot of members that are here that live in our association. I would ask that you delay your decision.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up. We appreciate it. The last speaker is Joe Wilson.
Good evening, City of Temecula, everyone, Mr. Mayor. My name is Joe Wilson, and I'm here today to represent the game of pickleball and everyone who is falling in love with the sport. It is something that's sweeping the country and the globe, and we're on the forefront of something really wonderful for many people. Big and small, young and old. And it's my understanding that the city is voting on granting a facility that will be soon to be in the city of Temecula. And I'm here to say thank you for everyone's efforts. It's really, really appreciated. I know that this is gonna be really life-altering and changing in so many positive ways for veterans, their families, and everyone in the community. So in that regard, to the new installation that is proposed, I want to say thank you on behalf of everyone that is invested in this sport. It's a really great thing. And I want to say thank you to everyone. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, that concludes public comments on the consent calendar.
All right, and I think I want to pull item 6 just for an explanation from PW on, because I think there's a misconception of what we're actually voting on. So I would like to pull it for a description. So we'll go through and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so let's go to the consent calendar. So item number 1 is waive reading of titles and text of all ordinances and resolutions included in this agenda. Number 2, approve action minutes of April 23rd, 2024. Number 3, approve list of demands. Number 4, approve fiscal statement for the third quarter ending March 31st, 2024. Number 5, approve agreement for consultant services with MDG Associates, Inc. to provide community block development block grant administration services for fiscal year 2024 through 2027. Number 6, we're going to pull. Number 7, approve minor maintenance agreement with True Line Construction and Surfacing, Inc. for court maintenance, crack fill, resurfacing, and striping services. Number 8, approve First Amendment to the professional service agreement with CNS Engineering, Inc. for the Marietta Creek and Overland Drive project, PW 16-05. Number 9, approve Second Amendment to consultant agreement with T.Y. Lin International for the I-15 French Valley Improvements, Phase 2, PW 1601. Number 10, award construction contract to Bador Construction Company, Inc. for the San Gratuitous Creek Trail Phase 2, Margarita Road Undercrossing, PW 1904. Number 11, award construction contract to Act 1 Construction, Inc. for the Pickleball Project, PW 21-03. Number 12, approve plans for specifications and authorized solicitation of construction bids for the Sidewalks Palba Road Project, PW 19-20. And number 13, adopt list of projects to be funded by Senate Bill 1 for fiscal year 2024-25. I'll accept a motion.
I'll move consent.
Been moved and seconded. Please vote. And that passes. Yes, he did.
Yes.
That passes 4-0. So let's go back to item number 6, because I think a lot of the concerns will be answered with your explanation. So go for it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Stewart. So the item before you is the consultant agreement for the roundabout at Jedediah Smith and DePortola Road. And the scope of work for that project does include a public outreach component. So the beginning of that project really will be to reach out to the residents and the neighbors to get their input on the plans for that. And then we would move into the environmental studies and then finally the development of the plans for the roundabout. So there will definitely be an opportunity for the residents to provide their input on the project as it begins really and then moves forward. And then one other thing I just wanted to address, that one of the comments regarding the speed. So we have been doing speed surveys on the DePortola corridor, and you can expect to see that coming to you probably this summer. And it looks like we will be able to reduce the speed limit there on the road there with those surveys are completed. So that is what is coming to you.
And I do believe in conversations we've had that the next design of a roundabout will add in a whole bunch of safety and or construction defects that may have existed in the first one.
Yes, and the consultant that we have selected is really the expert in roundabout design. That's really what they specialize in. So they'll be looking very, very closely at the safety issues and the design issues. And one of the other comments regarding crossing the street, and that will be incorporated into that design, is actually a crosswalk to get across on all four sides. And with the roundabouts, basically the road kind of narrows down, so it actually shortens the distance of the crossing and does make it easier. And you've actually got a little refuge in the middle, typically with a median in the middle of those splitter sections. So it actually does make it easier for pedestrians to get across the intersection.
So really, this particular vote is just to get a design in place and start the process to looking into the construction end of it.
Correct, yeah, and then the next steps would be, once those plans are complete, the plans would be coming back to the city council for approval and then authorize the bidding for the construction process.
Right, okay. So that being said, I would like to entertain a motion. Yes.
Just to the two gentlemen that ended up coming here, I just want to let you know, as your councilwoman for District 2, I heard you, I wrote down your questions, and as we go through this process, if this does pass through today, please reach out to me, because this is where I need to be connecting with you guys as my residents to be able to hear your voices so that way we can connect. But the city's going to do an excellent job as well to finding out what we need to do to move forward, if so. So thank you guys both for coming up, though, and just sharing. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move item 6.
Second.
All right. Moving second, please vote. And that passes 4-0. All right, so I will adjourn the city council meeting in favor of the community services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll call the Temecula Community Services District meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, please note that we are all still here. Do we have some public comments this evening? Okay, would you please call the first speaker?
Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We have 3 speakers. The first speaker is Mark Swearingen, to be followed by Adam Light.
All right, welcome.
Good evening again. I wanted to bring up why I'm here, and I'll show you a picture of my dog, Roxy. Roxy's representative of how many percent vote that I'm getting as a resident of District 1. Remind you that I do not have a council person for District 1, and the only person that voted to have representation was Kalfas, and he's the only one that was had the foresight to not have, that he knew that he wouldn't have to suffer me if there was a district representative. So I'm here, and oh, by the way, I'm going to be measuring those bushes and give you an update every 2 weeks so you know how your solutions are working. So, hey, I'm here today. I wasn't going to come to this part of the meeting until Councilman Schwank decided that he wanted to send me something asking me why didn't I come to the budget meeting and look at all the great things that you guys are doing. And, you know, you can taunt me and I'll come, and I did. So I made me look at why were you angry with me and why you emailed me and asked me that. And it was because I called you a skate guy instead of your name. And I said, hey, I'm going to let him know why I called him a skate guy. Remember your city, State of the City, where you branded yourself a skate guy? That would be it. So here, I looked at the budget, and it's amazing that there's this much money spent on skate parks. And I'm not against skate parks, and I'm not against bike trails. It's all good stuff. But there's one person that really loves them, and that's Councilman Schwank. So look at this. There's probably $20 million worth of stuff that we're putting towards his agenda. And how much are we putting towards the soccer parks, which are taking away to have skate parks? $0. And you're promising people that you're going to do something about the soccer parks. When you email people, Mayor, other council members, you say you're going to do something about it, but you don't tell them that there's nothing happening until 26 or 27, and there's $0 associated with it. You have to get the money from somewhere else. So be honest about how you're doing things, okay? It's serving Councilman Schwank, and Mayor, stop being the Barney Fife to his Andy Griffith, okay? You're always doing what he wants. You're always voting his way. So we can't get Mayor Kalfas in soon enough.
Thank you. The next speaker is Adam Light, to be followed by Natalie Light.
Good evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council members and staff. My name is Adam Light, and I was born and raised in Temecula, and this is where I now choose to raise my children. I'm here with Neighborhood Drop-In, and for those of you that don't know who we are a group of advocates for action sports such as skateboarding, BMX, scooters, and so on. It occurs to me that not all of the residents in Temecula know how important action sports facilities like the Temecula Skate Park are to our community. With the remodel of TSP around the corner, I am constantly asked, where will we go? Before, I used to say, I don't know, but we're working on it. Now, I can say that there is an answer to that question just around the corner. While TSP is under construction, we will need an alternative place to practice our passion. After seeing that there are 2 parks being considered and having some knowledge of the vendors in this industry, I'm here tonight to show support for the city's interest in providing the action sports community with these much needed alternative locations. Using a model provided by the Skate Parks Project, we have figured out that the city with a population of Temecula's requires approximately 49,000 square feet of skate park to meet the level of service needed for our community. Keep in mind, this only takes skateboarding into consideration and not the other sports that use these facilities. If we round up, Temecula Skate Park is only 23,000 square feet, and that leaves a bit of a deficit. These new projects will fill this gap and place these facilities in more accessible locations for those that cannot get a ride from their parents. While some of the upcoming projects in the Quality of Life Master Plan may not be for you, that doesn't mean that they're not for somebody else. I believe that the council members and city staff really do listen to our needs and they take action. I would just like to say thank you to the staff and city council members for all that they are doing for our community. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, and the last speaker is Natalie Light.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Natalie Light. I wanted to thank you very much for making the alternative skate parks while the Temecula skate park is being renovated. It makes me very happy knowing I will have another place to ride with my friends and family. I'm excited to see the new parks and ride them. Thank you for hearing us and taking part in solving the problem of us not having a safe place to ride. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Light. That is the last of the speakers.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. All right, we'll move on to our consent calendar. We have 3 items. Item 14 is approve action minutes of April 23, 2024. Item 15, approve financial statements for third quarter ended March 31, 2024. And item 16, approve multi-year agreements and amendments for services for various events, classes, programs, and activities. And I will entertain a motion and a second to approve that.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let us please vote. Okay, and that passes for 0. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our Director of Community Services report. Anything this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to let everybody know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and in honor of that, we will be unveiling our Temecula Art Mural Project mural, celebrating mental health matters over at Sam Hicks Monument Park. If you're available, please join us on Wednesday, May 15th at 5 p.m. for that unveiling. We are also recognizing the artists, which included Great Oak High School students with 26 contributing student artists from Great Oak High School. So we were very excited to have them participate and create this beautiful mural. And if you're not available for the unveiling, it will be up for a month, so please stop by and see that. And I just think it's important to recognize that all of these things we've heard about today, whether it's soccer or skate parks or anything else that community services does, fundamentally, one of our major goals is improving the mental and physical health of our community. And doing that is also an investment in our long-term well-being as a community, not just in terms of public safety, but also academic achievement for our children. Just the entire vitality of the community really hinges on that. So I just encourage everyone. I know we do a lot of proclamations, and like today we had a presentation slightly different than a proclamation relating to Bike Month, but for me, it really comes down to mental health awareness. If we're not taking care of that, then there's really nothing else we can do in this community. So thank you all, and please stop by and see the beautiful mural.
Wonderful, thank you. General Manager, anything this evening?
Nothing further, Mr. President.
All right, Directors, anything? All right, I'll go ahead and adjourn to our next meeting.
All right, I will convene the successor agency to the Temecula Redevelopment Agency. Madam City Clerk, please note we're all still here. Do we have any public comments?
You do.
Oh.
You have one public comment from
Okay.
Hannon Rickard. Mr. Rickard, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to kind of continue where I was saying earlier, but I kind of want to also and just encourage you all to really work with Laura and Melissa, and so maybe they're not quite understanding. It seems like to me that if they're seeming like you guys are not doing stuff, but then you say you are doing stuff. So it just seems like maybe there's a way we can do better communication or something. I'm kind of tempted to also talk to her and just try to figure it out, because it is important that we do that, and it's important for me to say something too. I felt kind of convicted, not trying to encourage you all to do all you can, and maybe just communication. Also, with that, back to my other point about trying to get to the root bottom of our problems. By the way, today is a special day for Israel. It's their birthday, 76 years since they were reestablished. And I want to bring that up because it's fulfillment of Bible prophecy. If you're familiar with Bible prophecy, it's a fulfillment of specifically Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11. And the point of me bringing this up, most importantly, is to put a healthy fear in us. The Bible says in Proverbs chapter 1, verse, I think it's 7 or 9, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What I want you all to have, most importantly, and all of us, is we want you to be so close with God that you're like Solomon. You can hear from God. He gives you wisdom. Like, he wouldn't allow this to keep happening. He would give you wisdom and be like, you know what? Here's the right thing to say, right questions to ask, the right things to do. And you don't have to have that, problem anymore. It doesn't really make you all look good, even though you probably get your arguments, I'm sure, and I haven't heard it myself. But I just want to encourage you to fear God, seek his face, ask him for wisdom on how to deal with the situation, because I can guarantee you this is just like training ground what we're experiencing right now from what's to come. What we saw October 7th, which was Israel's attack, was definitely no doubt the worst since the Holocaust. And what we saw there could very well happen here in this land. We see the agenda that the governor and the higher-ups in Sacramento are pushing down on us, like, for instance, going back to a girl being raped in a locker room because the guy is able to go in there freely. That, to me, that's appalling that already happened, and that's just, God's not gonna, he's not gonna tarry very long before he has to allow things to get worse. So I just want to encourage you all to really get close with God. Just seek his face. Let him speak to you. Don't take my word for it. Get a revelation. Faith in God is truly a revelation from God. I don't want you to be indoctrinated. Most of the church has.
Thank
God
you,
bless
sir. Mr. Mayor, that concludes all of our public comments for this evening.
All right, so we have the consent calendar, item number 17, approve financial statement for third quarter ending March 31st, 2024.
Move consent.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Please vote. All right, that passes 4-0. So do we have an executive director report?
No report, Mr. Chair.
Do we have anything from the board? Nope, so I'll adjourn that and go back into the Temecula City Council meeting. Item number 18, receive presentation regarding the annual report for calendar year 2023 for solid waste recycling services. And I'll hand it to Mr. Pat Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. As you know, we have an exclusive franchise agreement with CR&R Environmental Services to provide all of the solid waste and recycling services to the city. So we thought it'd be beneficial to have CR&R provide you a report on their services and programs, and actually even some of the new programs that have been implemented this past year. And those are primarily the state-mandated organics recycling and some other programs associated with the SB 1383 law and regulations that were passed by the state. So with that, I'd like to ask Alex Brejkovic, a representative from CR&R, to present his report.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. My name is Alex Brejkovic. I'm the Senior Regional Vice President with CR&R, and I'm here to lighten things up and talk a little trash. So what we're going to do tonight, as Pat said, is we're going to do a summary of what occurred in 2023, give you a little bit of a summary of some of the highlights of what happened last year here in the city of Temecula. So we're going to talk about service reports, give you a summary of our residential missed pickups, commercial missed pickups, talk a little bit about our labor force, where we're at with that. Truck deliveries, that's a great issue to discuss. SB 1383 compliance update. I have Barbara Jimenez here with me tonight. She's going to talk about SB 1383. She's our senior sustainability compliance manager. And I'm going to give a very, very brief 2024 legislative update as well. So let's start with the residential missed pickups. So for 2023, if you look at the yellow highlighted lines there, we compared the first 6 months of the year to the last 6 months of the year. First 6 months of the year, we were averaging about 20 missed pickups per day residentially. In the last 6 months, that number came down to just under 16 missed pickups per year, which is about, per day, which is about a 22% drop from the first 6 months to the last 6 months. And the way we measure these is based on incoming calls into our call center. So if somebody calls and says, you missed my trash, my recycling, my green waste, whatever it is, we take it from there. It's a miss. We're not going to ask whether it's, was late or blocked or whatever. If it's a miss, it's a miss. We log that as a miss. So you can see that over the last 6 months of last year, there was a significant improvement of 22%. I also wanted to mention that through January through March of 2024, that number of 15.87 is down to 12.72 missed pickups per day. So we're seeing very, very good trends, and we expect that to continue moving forward. I just saw the April numbers, and the numbers in April look even better. So we're very happy with the direction and the trend that our residential missed pickups are going in. On the commercial side, the first 6 months of the year, we were averaging about 6 missed pickups per day. In the last 6 months of the year, that number came down to 4.8 missed pickups per day, which is about 21% drop from one 6-month period to the other. Also, from January through March of 2024, that number of 4.84 is down to 1.16 missed pickups per day on the commercial side. So again, good trends, and it's what we like to see. Talk a little bit about labor, our labor force. I was up here about a year ago or so, and we talked a little bit about what we're experiencing with the labor force as a result of the pandemic and some of that layover from the pandemic. At the peak, we were experiencing a high of over 40% turnover rate, and that was brutal because every time you hired somebody, you had people walking out the back door just as quickly. That number, fortunately, is down to just over or under 15%. So that lower turnover rate equates to better service because now you have the same folks on the same routes week after week, and it's a repetitive job. So what we try to do is minimize that turnover in order to minimize the missed pickups, which you saw the numbers before. That's a direct reflection of that. We're also seeing more qualified labor applying for open positions. During the pandemic, we definitely saw a shift of qualified labor, and that has definitely changed and turned around, which we're very grateful for. We're still not at the pre-pandemic levels, but we're definitely a lot better than we were just a few months ago. High-quality labor equates to lower turnover rates, as I mentioned earlier. We're still looking for qualified drivers and mechanics. All of our drivers have to have a Class B, commercial driver's license. So we're always looking for good folks to join the team. Truck deliveries, an area that we've been focused on for the last few years as well. They're arriving. The new trucks are arriving. They're just not arriving fast enough. Temecula's fleet has seen regular replacements as those trucks arrive. CARB, which is the California Air Resources Board, implemented this year a new rule that is requiring manufacturers, truck manufacturers, to sell a minimum of 10% of new electric trucks to our industry. A new electric truck runs about $850,000 versus a natural gas truck that we currently use, which runs about $400,000. So there's a significant price increase on the truck itself. And that does not include the new charging infrastructure that we would have to implement into our yard. So that's for what, if we were to put that in and charge over 250 trucks, we're looking at about a $7 to $7.5 million investment. The challenge we have as an industry, as a company, is that electric trucks, unfortunately, they're not a proven technology in our industry yet. There's only one truck in the city of LA that's being tested as we speak, and a couple other trucks that we're aware of that are being tested as well, but not a proven technology. So the challenge is how do we work through this issue with CARB requiring 10% of our fleet to be purchased as electric. So we're dealing with that, but it's going to be a challenge moving forward for us. The next slide, I'm going to have Barbara come up and talk a little bit about. She's our SB 1383 compliance expert. SB 1383, as I mentioned to you a few months ago, Senate Bill 1383, changed our world a little bit in terms of recycling. So I'm going to let Barbara talk a little bit about that.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members and city staff. Like Alex mentioned, my name is Barbara Jimenez, and I'm the Senior Sustainability Manager at CR&R. I would like to draw your attention to what we call our compliance report card. It's basically a snapshot of your progress and where you are as a city. If you look at Q1 under 2022, when this Senate bill was went into effect, we were about 29.4% not compliant with recycling. If you look to the right of that, under Q2 2024, we're at 0% not recycling, which means we are 100% compliant under the recycling. Below that, we have the multifamily. Again, in Q1 of 2022, we were at 4% not recycling, and now Q2 2024, we are at 0% not recycling. To the right of this slide, we have the organics portion. Again, in 2022, Q1, we were at 35.85% not compliant with recycling, and now we are at 0% not compliant. So under the multifamily, again, in Q1, we were at 82% not recycling, and now in Q2, 2024, we're at 0% not recycling. Basically, in a nutshell, that means that you all are 100% compliant for this mandate, which is a huge feat. My team and I have worked very diligently on this, making sure that we get the city of Temecula to where it needs to be. The city staff here in Temecula has been absolutely amazing working with us, making sure that we get you all to where you need to be. So thank you for that. Another portion of this mandate is the compliance update for edible food. So basically what this is this requires commercial generators, Tier 1 and Tier 2, to donate edible food instead of discarding it into the waste stream. So there's two different qualifications. The Tier 1 is like the supermarkets, like Costco, Albertsons, Staters. Any store that's 10,000 square feet or bigger is considered a Tier 1. And Tier 2 are the restaurants that are 250 seats or 5,000 square feet in size or bigger. Also the schools, hospitals, hotels. So they need to start donating their edible food instead of letting it go into the trash system. So what is required for city compliance, the generators that do fall within this category, they must have signed agreements in place on site with a food recovery agency. So basically they have to show what is being picked up and the weight of it, and it's got to be tracked and monitored monthly. Is the city of Temecula compliant? Yes. For Tier 1 generators, we have about 15 stores in the city, and they all are compliant. They all have agreements in place. They all are donating their food, and we are doing inspections, and they are compliant. The Tier 2 generators, That goes into effect this year. So we started doing outreach last year, letting all the different Tier 2 generators know what is required. And we have been sending emails, calling, and visiting, and then we will start our inspections in the middle of this summer. So we're in a good spot there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. The next section of Senate Bill 1383 that I wanted to cover is an area that's called procurement. It's Article 12 of the 1383 regulatory package, which is 128 lovely pages. If you ever want to read some good documentation, that's a great regulatory package to read. But it requires jurisdictions to procure a certain quantity of recovered organic waste products that meet a predetermined procurement target. CalRecycle, that is the agency up in Sacramento that manages the waste stream in the state of California, basically has put together a procurement calculator. This procurement calculator uses per capita generation factors of 0.08 tons per person per year. Then we use the city's population. We use a predetermined conversion factor for each type of product. And those products could be renewable natural gas, which we produce at the AD facility, compost, mulch, electricity from biomass. So once we have those numbers, what we did is we plugged those numbers in for the city of Temecula. So using a population of 112,771, we ran the calculations for 2025. So 112,000 times 0.08, the city of Temecula would need to procure 9,021 tons per year. Now for 2024, that target is 65% of that 921. So for this year, it's 5,864 tons. Then you have to use a conversion factor for compost, which is what the city will be procuring. That's 5,233 tons a year. Because Temecula uses our AD facility, you basically get a credit. That credit is going to be anywhere between 25 and 30% of that number, okay? So when you take that 25% off the 5,233 tons, leaves the city with an annual procurement requirement of approximately 3,900 tons per year in 2025 and moving forward. That number will be a little bit less in 24 because of the 65% reduction. So, cities are required by law to procure a calculated amount of recovered organic waste, be that RNG, renewable natural gas, mulch, compost, each and every year as part of these regulations. Those procurement targets can be satisfied by buying in bulk compost for center medians, city parks, and this is something that we've talked with Pat and his staff at length, and putting together a plan for this year and as well as moving forward. We also have the ability to bag this material. Kellogg's, which is a large third-party bagger, will bag material for us, and we can give that away at events like community cleanups that we just had. And also, obviously, transportation fuel, which is the RNG for the trucks that we use here in the city. So the issue is, how do you fund this? This is one of those, unfortunately, it's one of those unfunded mandates that come down from Sacramento. Cities can purchase their annual allotment. In this case, it's plus or minus 3,900 tons through the general fund. We can spread that annual cost in the rates, which for residential is anywhere between 50 and 75 cents per home per month. Those are the two main ones. Temecula's annual cost for this program to procure the amount of compost or mulch that will need to be procured will be between $125,000 and $150,000 a year. Without the RNG credit that you're able to take advantage of because of the AD facility, the city's cost would have been approximately $180,000 a year. So it's significant. we've talked, again, with Pat and your staff on a number of times in regards to this issue, and it's an issue that we really need to start addressing because we're already in May of 2024, and that's coming up fast. On a different subject, just wanted to talk a little bit about legislatively some of the issues related to solid waste up in Sacramento. There was a bill called, it was SB 1424, Senator Blakespear. We opposed that bill, and so did most of the industry, because it allowed for other entities to collect various materials in the city, potentially violating the franchise agreement. It took away local control, added bureaucracy, unfortunately, and the city could lose control over your waste stream, which is not something you want to do, especially when you're being held accountable to CalRecycle. Fortunately, that bill got killed in the EQ committee, so for this year, it's dead. So that's a good thing. Senate Bill 1175, this is Ochoa Bogue's bill. We're supporting. That bill would require CalRecycle to consider alternatives to census tracts when deciding the boundaries of a low population or elevation waiver that would require low population waivers. So these are just a couple of probably 50 to 75 bills up in Sacramento that deal with solid waste. So that concludes our report tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, yes, we do have questions.
Just a quick question. Alex, thank you so much for the presentation, for them, both of you, very much. I know you guys have been working hard, and my trash has been picked up, and I haven't heard anything from complaints from any of my residents, so thank you.
Glad to hear that.
I do have one quick question, though. Going back to the beginning of your presentation when you were talking about the electric vehicles, this is something I think a couple of years ago, you and I at your, what do you call it, a garbage place?
The yard.
The yard, had kind of spoken about and things like that. My question is as the electric vehicles more and more have to come onto the yard that you guys have to use them, what is that going to make a difference? How is that going to make a difference for the residents as far as how much they're getting charged? Is it going to drastically increase that? What does that look like? Do you know by any chance? By now, I know we're still kind of in the early phases.
Yeah, we're in the very, very early phases, and there are a number of lawsuits pending on this issue. Just read yesterday that there are a number of states filing lawsuits on this issue regarding the trucking industry and the effect it's having on them. So we're not quite sure at the end of the day how this is all going to be rolled out. We haven't run any numbers per se on the variance between a new electric truck versus a new natural gas truck. Just to give you an example, one of the things that we always focus on is payload, right? How much trash can we carry in a truck? Electric trucks are much, much heavier because they have to carry a lot of batteries. And as a result, because the tare weight of the truck is much heavier, the amount of trash you can carry is reduced significantly. Because now that max load that you can carry in a truck is set by law, 52,500 pounds. But now your weight of your truck has gone up. So the delta between the two, instead of being able to carry 10 tons, we're estimating we can only be carrying 6.5 tons. That's about a 35 to 40% drop in what we can carry. So what does that mean? That means we have to put more trucks on the street to pick up the same amount of trash. All those calculations need to be thought through and identified. We're not there yet. We don't even have a truck to really compare to yet. So it would be premature for us to even talk about what it's going to do to rates, what it's going to do to our ability to collect the same amount of materials that we currently collect today.
Wow, that's pretty scary. And so I think just common sense is like the rates are going to go up. I mean, it's just it's going to go down to the consumer.
I don't see any other way. I mean, you're going to increase your fleet by probably 30 to 40%.
And this is across the board in California.
Everywhere.
So I thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alex, for the presentation. Appreciate it. we're dealing with the same thing at RTA, right? That conversion to electric trucks, and it can, sometimes these regulations are problematic in the sense that your anaerobic digester is creating fuel for your fleet. That's
correct.
Correct. And so kind of like, wait a second, what are we doing here? It doesn't make a ton of sense. So we'll deal with it, I guess. The pickup trends, the missed pickup trend, clearly going in the right direction. So I appreciate that. Much like Councilmember Alexander, I haven't really heard anything. And that's often the first thing I hear. It's like, hey, my trash, didn't get picked up. So appreciate all the work that you're doing to make sure that those are getting picked up, because it's extremely important. Speaking of that, important events, community cleanup, great job on Saturday over at Chaparral High School. Very smooth. I was there earlier in the morning, dropped off some things, and I always like those events. I think it's an easy opportunity for us to get rid of.
I think I want to give a shout out to Pat and his department and Aaron, because there was a little bit of planning going into that event, and it turned out really well. One of the smoothest events we've had, which was great on our side.
Yeah,
so
no, it absolutely was. No, that's I just appreciate the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything, Brendan? Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Let's talk about the renewable gas that you guys actually create. So there's no talk of allowing that still to be part of your fleets? I mean, are they trying to? I don't understand where they're, because it's basically almost clean burning, isn't it?
Yeah. So what we create in Paris at our facility is called renewable natural gas.
Yeah.
Created from the organics that we collect off the curb, whether that's green waste or food waste. It's the cleanest burning renewable fuel in the state of California. Unfortunately, natural gas today is not viewed very positively by our legislature. And as a result, it's an all-electric or nothing scenario. Our position has always been, we're not against electric at all. We just think it should be an all-the-above strategy. There's electric, there's hydrogen, there's renewable natural gas, there's different fuels for transportation. And so we've always been of the opinion that, we got to do something with this organic that we're now collecting. And we thought we had a solution, long-term solution for all of our cities in making this happen. And it's been a struggle, quite frankly, since we opened it 7 years ago. And what's ironic is if you look at the laws that were on the books prior to us opening it, was all supporting renewable natural gas. And so it's just been a struggle, and we're trying to work with CARB, trying to at least give us the opportunity to phase out and not just cut us out.
When are they demanding the switch over?
Well, it depends who you talk to. We have to start in the next few years, the transition. And if I remember the numbers correctly, don't quote me on this, but I think it's 2036 that we have to be fully electric. But the problem is that as you're transitioning from, say, natural gas to electricity, now you're going to have trucks in your fleet that are electric, and you're going to have trucks in your fleet that are natural gas, and you've got to build out infrastructure for the power to come into your yard, which is a huge immense amount of power that we're going to draw. And our biggest concern, I'll be honest with you, is when Edison says, hey, we got to shut down because, next come July or August, there's not enough power to go around. If we can't charge our vehicles, how are we going to get the trash picked up the next day? Which is a real concern.
Oh, yeah.
A real concern.
For
So
sure.
we've made all these arguments for the last few years, and unfortunately, it hasn't really done much. But
So I want to talk about missed pickups. How many do you guys keep any kind of track of drivers that said, yeah, I went by that house and their cans weren't out front.
Yeah.
And then they call as a missed pickup when in fact they just got up late and forgot to put the
Yeah.
cans out.
So I was just talking to Aaron about this a
Yeah.
little bit earlier. So what we did about 2 months ago, we did a pretty significant route adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
We moved stops from Friday, moved them to Thursday because our Friday was really, really heavy. And just to balance things out, you know, we did that. But what we've also been doing is we've been moving stops around during the day in order to, again, fine-tune the routing. So in my neighborhood, right, I live over near Chardonnay Hills, the trash driver who used to show up around 2 or 3 in the afternoon started showing up at 7. So if I didn't put my cans out the night before, like I usually do, the guy goes by at 7 and you're gonna call us and say, you missed us, right?
Yeah.
My next door neighbor, my neighbor across the street had that exact same thing happen to her. So it's an issue that we're gonna have to better address, whether that's better communication on our part, which I think is where it's gonna boil down to, or what. But we are making changes. We are fine-tuning, if you will, our routing, and that does sometimes require that we don't change the day of service, but we change when we're there. So if you're used to having your guy stop by in the afternoon, he may be switched to the morning. And then all of a sudden, if you didn't get your cans out that morning or the night before, it may be causing issues. And so we're going to dive a little deeper into that issue, but it's impossible for us to, you know, we're not, that's why I said earlier when I gave my presentation, we don't start questioning, you know, when did you have it out, or we just go back and get it serviced.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Oh,
Alex, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
And I appreciated our conversation today on operations but for the general public and for the city council, what do you recommend? What's the best mechanism for people to report? You want them going through phone dispatch? Do you want them going email? Do you want them is there an app?
Yeah.
What's the best mechanism for people to find somebody if they do have a concern or a missed pickup or thing like that?
Great question. Thank you, Aaron. The best way to get a hold of us is to call us. We have been developing an app, and once that app is up and running, one of the features is going to be people will be able to communicate with us via the app. But for now, the best way to do it is to call our office at the toll-free number. I don't have it here in front of me, but that's the best way to contact us.
all right. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, so on to item number 19, which approve recommendation related to the acceptance of certain streets into the city maintained street system for street maintenance at the request of subcommittee members, Mayor Pro Tem Kalfas and myself. Mr. Thomas.
Well, I'm going to introduce Mr. Ron Moreno, our Assistant Public Works Director, to provide the staff report, but I just wanted to make one comment before he gives you the report. So this issue, when it came up, one of the things that happened as a result of this issue is it really caused us to do a real deep dive into a lot of our records, and as a result of that, we found a lot of information we did not have before. So it really was a good process from that standpoint and had some really good outcomes. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ron to give the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's very nice to see you tonight. This is business item number 19, Private Public Street Maintenance Ad Hoc Subcommittee. And up on the screen, you can see I've given kind of a history here, an overview of how we got here. So if you look back, it was originally agendized. It was asked to be put on an agenda. Subcommittee was subsequently formed, and then there were multiple meetings by the subcommittee to go over various criteria and to get to where the subcommittee wanted to go. It included a couple of site visits as well, so we actually did look at some streets, and the entirety of the council was able to do this in 2 separate site visits. But as Mr. Thomas mentioned, the staff went through a deep dive of city inventory. We have over 3,500 streets in our inventory, 321 miles. So during the process of going through that inventory, there were certain streets that were found to have been a discrepancy between, was it privately maintained or was it publicly maintained? A few of these streets that I want to point out just as an example: El Hazen Circle, Cristo Verde. There was also Dahlia Way. And then through the course of these meetings, we also found that there were a few streets identified, such as Calle Girsol, Calle Chapos, that were actually accepted years ago by the city, however, never made it into county records. And so therefore, we didn't quite understand some of those things that were going on. So there were definitely some discrepancies that were worked through during the course of the work of this subcommittee. So as the committee started to discuss various streets, and there was criteria that was set to look at where is it that there were streets that were used by the general public, but yet were supposed to be privately maintained. So the committee set out to put together some criteria that they would establish in order to identify those specific streets. The first one was only residential streets, so the subcommittee was not looking at commercial areas. That was number one. And streets with at least 2 entrances, in other words, one connected to a major arterial, or collector, and then also streets that met city standards, but they also connected to a paved street. So those were kind of the very first criteria. The second criteria was streets dedicated for public use by the property owner. So these were streets that were dedicated, however, not accepted by the city for maintenance. So that was a key component there. No property or homeowner associations available for any maintenance, so no HOA was going to come in and maintain these streets. So that was the fourth criteria. The fifth, not in areas with any special districts, CFDs, ADs, anything that would be a mechanism to share in the maintenance costs. And then lastly, the subcommittee did not want to look at streets that were possibly going to be improved with future development projects. So those were the 6 criteria that were identified by the subcommittee. What came out of that is that there were 5 different locations that were identified. So starting on the left-hand side, the most westerly red dashed area that you can see there, and I'll go clockwise, that's Villa La Vida. Villa La Vida is just off Margarita. And currently, the development that's going on there is the Solana Assisted Living Center. So in the course of that construction, they will finish the improvements on Villa La Vida, and then there's a parcel next door that most likely will develop as well. And then that would be accepted into the city maintains road system. The next one was Joseph Road, going clockwise at the top. Joseph Road is also a connection going from Nicholas and serving the residents not only to the north that are in the city, but what's interesting about Joseph, it is our city-county boundary. So therefore, there's residents in the county that also use that connector there. And so therefore, that one is under the same condition as Villa La Vida. There is a development that is currently has an application in with the city, is starting to do some of their initial movement with us. And so therefore, that one was removed because the development will have to finish the improvements on Joseph Road. Then we move over to Calle Medusa. Calle Medusa is one in which you're really familiar with because, as you know, there's a detour going on through Calle Medusa right now due to the development of the Somers Bend Nicholas Road Extension Project. So Medusa is a connector. It's used quite heavily going from Nicholas to La Serena. And even pre-detour, the numbers show that there is quite a bit of movement on Calle Medusa. Then moving down to the bottom right area, excuse me, we have Green Tree. Green Tree is served off of Paba. It has a connection called Cayesidral as well. And Green Tree moves along and goes back to a cul-de-sac that has been improved called Deodore. I'll get to that and give you a little bit more detail when we get there. I just want to show all of these to start. And then lastly, we have Ormsby. And Ormsby was also identified, and Via El Delora is a cul-de-sac off Ormsby. So to summarize, just to go back, these were the streets that ended up showing up with that criteria, those 6 criteria. No other streets in the city ended up showing up except these. So let's take them one by one. I already mentioned Calle Medusa, so we don't have to spend too much time on it, but all of you have probably driven on Medusa at some point in time, you can see that it's only this section that has never been accepted for maintenance. That's because the rest of Medusa, because it's a long connector going all the way to La Serena, there's obviously, you can see the housing development. And so therefore, all of that has been accepted in the past. It's only this section, and you can see that it's somewhat rural in nature, probably is not going to have any development on either side of it for quite some time. So therefore, this was one of the ones that the subcommittee looked at as a connector that should be maintained by the city. Green Tree Road, as mentioned before, Green Tree is connected to Paba, Cayasidral, and what I wanted to focus on here is it goes all the way back to Diodor, and Diodor was a subdivision that was done in the mid-2000s, around 2006, when Diodor, which is fully improved, has all the improvements in, but it was mapped a private street. It was mapped that it wanted to be private and stay private. However, when that subdivision came in, they were required to put in pavement, because Green Tree used to be dirt, pavement all the way to Paba for health and safety reasons. But it's not being maintained by anyone currently, and so Green Tree was identified, but Diodor would stay private unless things changed with regards to the residents there. Ormsby. Ormsby was also one that was identified because it connects residents from Santiago all the way up. You can actually get from Santiago up to Paba, and so you can use that as a connection there. And Ormsby was missing a certain dedication, and this is where we wanted to talk about some of the discrepancies, because the residents of Ormsby were looking at it and they were coming to us regarding discrepancies that they were seeing. And I'll go to this next slide. This is an example of when we look and you can see that there was a portion that jogs out there. It does not show the dedication there, but in reality, look to the right, a document was found from 1975, pre-city incorporation. It was in the county days. The county accepted that dedication of Ormsby that we were missing, but yet never updated their records. And so as a point of reference, all of our parcel information that you see in GIS is downloaded from the county on a periodic basis. So we're as good as the information we get from the county. And you know, the county's a big county. We have 3,500 streets. I'm not sure how many streets are in the county, but I'm sure discrepancies are gonna happen. This was one of those where the dedication was not found until the work of this subcommittee, and then it was found, and now that can be corrected through the county. So the dedications for Ormsby as far as public ingress and egress are there, but not the maintenance portion as of this time. So the other thing that staff did was look at the fiscal impact of these streets, should they be accepted. This is kind of the nuts and bolts of how we did that, and that was by taking the width of the streets, multiplying it by the length of the streets to get a square footage. And because we know how much we spend annually when we have our slurry projects and we do it by the square foot, we were able to put some numbers here and be able to come up with an annual cost. Of course, these streets, should they be accepted into our maintained system, won't be slurried every year. It's every 5 to 7 years, depending upon condition, depending upon their PCI, their pavement condition index, and where they fall in our slurry pavement management program. So what we did is we just averaged it out per year, and so then we have a summary table here where it shows Medusa, Green Tree, Ormsby, and Via El Dolora, and those costs associated roughly on an annual basis based upon those figures that I was telling you before. So we can see that on an annual cost for acceptance of these streets would be around $34,000 per year would be the fiscal impact. One thing that I didn't mention, El Dolora, it is a cul-de-sac, but because it is to a standard and it does connect to a paved road, Ormsby and then Santiago, didn't make a lot of sense to leave it out. So therefore, that's why we added El Dolora to the list that would be accepted. So this is our pretty much average here. And finally, the subcommittee's recommendation is to direct staff to prepare resolutions of acceptance of these streets into the city maintained system. Those were the 4: Medusa, Green Tree, Ormsby, El Dolora. And then after adoption, should the council decide to do so, The said streets will be added to the city's pavement management system, and they will be slotted in per their PCI, as well as how we go about our pavement management practices and how we slurry streets. So I'm available for any questions, and so is Mr. Thomas, obviously, or it can just be discussions.
Will anybody have questions? Let's go questions of staff first. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. The only question that I have is on Green Tree, and really just any of these, depending upon how often or when they're gonna get slurried next. Actually, let's ask that question. When are they due to get slurried next? What would that look like for those streets?
Those streets, because those areas or those districts where we typically do our slurries happen, on a rotational basis, and it just happened for Ormsby, it just happened in the area of Green Tree. Those wouldn't be slated for another 5 to 7 years.
Okay, and that being said, I know that there's those PCI numbers that I just learned about today. Looking at those PCI numbers, I believe that Green Tree is kind of lower on that list as far as there's definitely some things that need to be repaired. Is that something the city, if and when we basically accept these streets, will we go in and make sure that those streets are cleaned up, potholes, things like that, or are those big major cracks, anything that's in there possibly?
Should the council decide to accept those streets, we would immediately be maintaining those, and that means that any defects, potholes, we would have to repair right away.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? I just have a couple. So who maintains Calle Medusa right now?
Well, the part that goes through the residential, we do.
Right.
And essentially, the rest of it, we maintain through signage. It's one of those that has been maintained in the past by the city, back when we did or did not know, but it would essentially be us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's getting maintained seemingly right
Yes.
now. Yeah. The other streets, like Green Tree, is that in Ormsby, the residents are maintaining them?
Nobody
they're just not maintaining
They're
them?
not maintained. Nobody maintains them.
Okay. All right, that's all my questions.
All right, anything? Okay, so, thank you.
You're welcome.
So now I guess we'll go into actual council discussion, and since I was on the subcommittee with Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to go first to kind of give you a background of what we were thinking. So when this all came up, one of the things I was most concerned about was, were these streets being used in our circulation element? Were people using it outside of these neighborhoods? And if they were, then they should be part of our circulation element, and we should be maintaining it based on the usage of other than the residents who are there. Because if it was a dead-end street, then no, But if it had 2 points of access, then that means people could cut through. And if people are cutting through, my personal, and that's why we came up with this criteria. We started kind of slicing away, at what we were trying to achieve. And for me personally, I was trying to achieve, if it's being used by our citizens other than the people who actually live there, it should be maintained by the city. If it met a certain standard of, or level of standard. And I think everything met, at least at minimum, the country road standard. And some of the streets were actually fully improved. So that was kind of like where we landed. That's why we landed with so few streets, because nothing else fit into that category. So, Pro Tem Kalfas?
I would completely agree with you, Mayor. First I just want to thank our city staff. I'm going to steal Captain Durham's city team. I like that. Our city team and the mayor, I feel like it was a very beneficial exercise that came out of this. And a lot of work went into the meetings. A lot of preparations went into the meetings. So I would especially want to thank, again, our city team, including Ron and Pat and Annie and Betsy, who put in a tremendous amount of work to get to where we are today. I mean, like Ron said, we found documents from 1975 that the city never had because the county never had it. So these are just documents that we found and that were brought to our attention by very diligent constituents of ours. So I'm thankful for the work that was put in. I agree with what the mayor said. I agree with the results that were produced out of the subcommittee. And after decades of going unmaintained, I'm looking forward to bringing these streets into our public maintenance system and moving forward.
All right. Councilmember Smythe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. I am going to be slightly critical of this process, and I want to lead with that because I don't want anyone to take offense to it. It's really just about the process. It's nothing personal. For me, this has never been about maintenance, like maintaining a street. I have no issue with that at all. You can't really argue that it's a huge fiscal lift when the estimate is as low as it is. And like was mentioned by Pat, and even Mayor Pro Tem, the good things can come out of these processes. So when we start to sort of look into how we've been doing things and we see, oh, there's an issue, well, let's make it right. So I can get behind that. When Councilmember Alexander and I did the tour, there were things that made sense. Like Calle Medusa makes sense to me. It's clearly an inlet outlet to homes. We're seemingly semi-maintaining it on some level because the street is pretty nice, really. And that made sense to me. There were some that didn't make as much sense to me. The process was extremely quick from February to here. Like, that's pretty fast for like how a subcommittee works. I think it's a little too quick. Some of the criteria, well, not some of the criteria I don't agree with. And I'll tell you why. So if you have an HOA that funds street or road maintenance, that is getting spread out, that cost is getting spread out on the homeowners, like right around those streets. If we accept streets in for full maintenance, that there's not a homeowners association, that cost gets spread out across the entire community. So it doesn't seem equitable just because you're essentially penalizing an HOA, an assessment district. We do have one assessment district. I'm not entirely sure if it's still active, but John Warner Road over here in San Diego Estates was an assessment district where they came together and they formed an assessment district to assess themselves, to make improvements and maintain the streets. So there's that. So it's essentially penalizing an HOA. I'll give you an example. In Harveston, there's two streets, Bristol Road and Laurel Lane, which connect from the lake, so our most utilized park probably in the city, maybe Southwest Riverside County, to the main streets in Harveston, like the ring roads. Essentially two streets that have one inlet, one outlet, so they both go to the same destination. The vehicle daily trips is about 500, so it's clearly more than just the residents that are on that. There's 60 homes that are in that HOA that pay $18.27 a month to maintain those streets. If you look at the street index is very high. It's above our city average. It's like in the high 70s and low 80s. So they do a pretty good job of maintaining it. For those 60 homes, it's $1,096 a month, $13,000 a year, $131,000 over 10 years, and roughly $250,000 over the lifespan of those homes. They were built in about 2005 that folks have paid. Those streets are built to a standard. They're fully improved. On one side, sidewalks, curb, gutter. The other side doesn't have that. The other side just has homes, kind of like a rolled curb, if you will. It doesn't have that additional width. So I believe, and I don't know, but I believe at the time, they just weren't accepted because of the width. It didn't make sense, and the city council at the time said, hey, we're not going to accept that. But fundamentally, those streets are built to the city standard, except for the width. But those residents pay for that maintenance. Why wouldn't we just pay for that maintenance too? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So you're essentially saying, some folks on Green Tree Ormsby makes some sense to me. I do think there is a little bit of cut through there. I don't know how much, though. I'm trying to remember what the vehicle trips on Ormsby was. It wasn't huge, but it was a decent amount. Green Tree is like, that's the hardest one for me. It's really one way in, one way out. Calle Cedral is a dirt road. It's not improved at all. But then we're also leaving out Calle Cerizo. I don't know how you pronounce that, sorry, to the folks that live on that street. That's a cul-de-sac in that community. So much like when we talk about Ormsby and the one cul-de-sac in Ormsby that we're going to maintain, it didn't make sense to leave that one out, but seemingly it was left out. Via La Vida, that's the one that had me the most, because that street connects to Margarita Road. So essentially just south of Solana is where Via La Vida connects. It's got about 1,000, it's got 922 average annual daily trips. This PCI index from Margarita to the First Street is a 30. It's the lowest in the whole entire thing. But we're waiting on development, right? And I don't have a problem waiting on development at all. And I think that is where the cities put themselves in a good position, is we've typically waited on development to build that, right? Whether it's Harveston, and we can talk not just about the streets and street maintenance, but CFDs, whether it's Roarpaw Ranch. Harveston actually has 2 CFDs. I used to live in Harveston. So a property tax bill from a few years ago. We paid $489 one year and $120 another for another assessment. There's 2, one's for public improvements and lake maintenance, and the other one is for infrastructure. So typically, when we have a development, that cost gets spread out over homeowners. What we're doing here is, maintenance aside, you're taking on the burden of, much to what Councilmember Alexander mentioned, is if we accept a street into the road maintenance, for maintenance, like, I don't have a problem for that. What we're going to find is those streets are going to need to be rebuilt at some point. That's the heavy lifting. That's the cost. It was 1.7 to 3.3 million. That was the estimate. I don't think we know enough about this and the potentials, and I think there's some other smaller streets that are left off that only really do serve 3 or 4 or 5 homes. That again, those residents are making those payments for, but here we are potentially going to accept these in. I really, really struggle with that. Like, how are you going to go to the folks in Harveston that have been paying for 20 years to say, well, just because you have an HOA, sorry. You guys, you 60 homeowners, thank you, I guess. That's what we're saying to them. Thank you. So, so for me, I just think my question to the subcommittee is, how do you reconcile that? Not that we shouldn't look to find a way to, especially in some of these streets, work with the homeowners to get them up to a city standard, boom, accept them in. Yeah. But it's getting them to that point that I think is burdensome, and where I have been struggling with this for quite a while. I mean, what do you do to the folks at the John Warner Assessment District? They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and they figured it out and they wanted their roads improved. And they did it, So that's really where I'm at with it. Like I said, when we went on that, it made a ton of sense. I wish we spent a little more time on this, honestly, because I think there's no rush. Even if we accept these in tonight, let's say we vote to accept them in, are we going to prioritize them? So they're not going to get bumped up to the top of the queue. They're going to fall in line. So maybe it's 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Maybe it's 4 years. What's the rush?
Right.
So go back to the subcommittee, put in more work to understand all of the costs associated with this. And then how do you reconcile the residents that have already done it and HOAs that have already done it? That's a significant I mean, I had folks emailing me, going, hey, you're looking at these streets, here's the information. I lived there, you know, I know people that live there. That's in my district. So that's where I struggle with this. I don't think there's enough, I don't think we have enough information. I think the work that you all did, while I appreciate it, I think is incomplete. I think it's rushed. And I think that we really need to look at this and figure a better way through this to make it equitable for everyone. And that's all I have for right now.
Council members, Jessica, anything? Nope. Okay.
Just listening.
Well, I gotta say, I agree with you, Mr. Schwank, that I think maybe it does deserve, because realistically, there is no rush to pull this trigger, only because most of these streets are in really good shape. And when we did the pavement survey, they all rated relatively high. So there's not going to be a slurry seal happening on the weekend. So it probably won't happen for 2 or 3 or 5 years. So we're not in a huge hurry on this. And I would like to investigate, because that was the first time I ever heard about those 2 roads in Harveston. So I would like to kind of look at that a little bit more deeply and kind of investigate a little bit more. So I'm also in favor of bringing this back to subcommittee and looking at it a little deeper. Mayor Pro Tem.
I would completely disagree.
All right.
I guess I'll just try to be as short as possible and only hit on a few items here. I think bringing this back to subcommittee, I mean, sure, we can bring the idea back to subcommittee, but regardless of what happens in subcommittee, I think that we can agree that these streets should be accepted. Should those 2 other streets also be accepted? That could absolutely be something that we can look at when we bring it back to subcommittee. But these streets that we brought forward today, we agree that they should be accepted into the maintenance system. And to say it's rushed, I would say it's 2 decades delayed. I would say when developers build developments, they start out with HOAs. They start out with CFDs. They start out with assessment districts. The John Warner Assessment District, a lot of those homes that were not built 20 years ago when that assessment district was put into place, they weren't there. So those few, and I don't know if it was developer brought forward or the homeowners brought forward, but that was before a lot of those homes on Lolita and Paulita and John Warner and La Presa Loop were even built. That assessment district was put into place. And that assessment district was put into place so that eventually the city would accept the streets, which the city has now done. That assessment district, to my knowledge, is no longer in play. As far as the HOA homes, I think there's a slight difference in a few HOA homes. There's HOAs like Paseo del Sol or Paloma del Sol or Vintage Hills that are HOAs, but they're not HOA maintained roads. So those HOAs, although they're an HOA, they're publicly maintained roads. And then there's HOAs like a few in Red Hawk and a few all over that have gated communities that are gated HOAs that specifically built those developments as HOAs and privately maintained roads because they wanted, say, a different standard. Like there's the Crown Hill reserve homes that have a gated entryway, and those are all privately maintained because they wanted whatever streets that they wanted, but they wanted to make sure that they had the maintenance of those streets. And that's the same with a lot of HOA homes that pay into their road maintenance system. Those developers specifically built those neighborhoods to have those HOAs so that they can pay for their own maintenance of the road for whatever reason at the time the development was built. There's a few other things. Did we get through things quick? I would say absolutely. Were we extremely diligent and thorough? I would say absolutely. I think the mayor would agree that I was very direct in my approach with staff with the subcommittee. I mean, after each subcommittee, I talked to the mayor and we had a very clear vision on the end goal line. So just because that we worked through this subcommittee very quick does not mean that we were not thorough, does not mean we were not diligent, but I made sure, and the mayor made sure that we had meetings every 2 weeks that were set at a very specific agenda. Every day we went into those subcommittees, the agenda was printed, it was laid out. Annie and Ron and Pat did a great job of having very different maps each time, improved maps from what we started with. So I'd say the work that we did in completing the subcommittee was extremely thorough and thought through, and we did a very diligent and, I would say, successful job. Now, the two streets that you have in question, Mayor, would I be willing to absolutely go back and look at those? Yes. Does that change the position of any of the 4 streets that we have before us today? I would say absolutely not. I would say these streets have waited multiple decades to be maintained. If we accept them tonight, will they be maintained tomorrow? No, but they'll be put into the queue, and that moves them forward into being paved in the future. So I would disagree that sending this all back to the subcommittee when we've already done all this work and we've come to this conclusion today. We waited until all the dedications were given like we wanted to in the subcommittee. We put a nice bow on it. We brought the bow and the gift to the city council. We have it here before us today to have it unwrapped and then repackage it and go back and look at even more, I would say is okay, as long as we complete what we came here to do tonight. And if we want to go back and look into more, because the subcommittee isn't done. We still have commercial roads to look into. We still have other things to look into. So I'm absolutely okay looking at those other streets. But to delay these streets even further, to me, does not make any logical sense. Did you have something?
Just something quick. I mean, I think everybody really said it all in a sense. Schwenk, I appreciate you bringing that up because, again, that's something I haven't heard either with the HOAs. And so, but I still have to agree, though, with Kalfas as well, is like, you guys have done your due diligence. You guys have worked hard on this. We had that opportunity to go on the bus and stuff. And listening to staff right now, they're, I believe, in a good position and they feel comfortable with the decisions that are being made here to be able to move forward. So my recommendation would be, let's move forward on these streets, let's bring it back, and let's see if there's some other individuals or other residents that we can help with those streets, because I think that was a great plan as well that you're bringing forward too. So just take a look at it and see what we can move forward on.
All right, well, mind if I go again?
Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to drag this out too much, but again, for you to say that, nothing's going to change with these 4 streets, I mean, the way this is right now, I'm not supportive of it. We don't know some of the runoff issues. We don't know, I mean, yeah, we have some right-of-way stuff squared away, like that's great, but we don't fully understand what it's going to cost to replace some of these streets. And I think that's the biggest issue. Like, the maintenance, I'm not opposed to any maintenance at all. Like, the amount of money we've funneled into road maintenance should speak for itself. Like, we want the streets to be 100%. We know we'll never get to 100%, but we want them all to be in the 80s. Like, we want the streets to be nice. The way that the city's worked for a while has put the burden on the developer and or the homeowner, right, to come up with the funds or the assessment district or whatever. Now, if we're not asking or if past councils aren't negotiating with individual property owners for like a streets in lieu fee or some sort of ask, say like, hey, you're gonna build this house, right? And we're talking about, on some of these streets, we're talking about multi-million-dollar homes. We're not talking about, $500,000, $600,000 tract homes. Putting the burden on the entire city is not right. From a maintenance perspective, I'm okay with it. But from a rebuild, and some of these streets are going to need a significant rebuild at some point, and we might not be here. The folks sitting up here might go, what did they do that for? And that's where I struggle with it. I don't struggle with the maintenance at all. Happily maintain these streets if they're at least brought up to that minimum standard so we know what we're dealing with. We don't know what we're dealing with. That's why I'm saying take a pause to fully understand what that financial burden is going to be for the future, because that impacts all the projects and things that we want to do. If we start adding in $5 million to CIP to rebuild a road, like, we don't know. We don't know. I'm not discounting the work that you did and the time you put in. Clearly, you guys worked through this item. I'm not discounting that one bit. What I'm saying is we don't know on some of these streets. And it's not, again, if you look at, some of the the trips on Green Tree, it's not a cut through. I mean, you genuinely can't say that that's being used by anyone other than the folks on Deodore and Green Tree. It's just not. And the council at the time, I mean, Green Tree's paved the way it is because of the Deodore development. And had, let's say council said, we want you to full width, full improvements all the way to Paba, that project probably might not have been built, right? They would have said, hey, we can't, it doesn't pencil for us, we're out. So the road's still dirt. So the fact that it's even paved is due to past councils and the negotiations they had with developers to get it at least to that point. I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. All I'm saying is, if we do it tonight, we're just doing it to get it through, and there's so much more out there that we don't know. I mean, you guys didn't even know about Bristol and Laurel Lane. Like, how many other streets are out there that are similar, right? How many other residents are listening tonight, and they're going, hey, me and my neighbors, we pitched together a few bucks, and we've been slurry sealing our street for the last 10 years, and why am I left out? Because there's a lot of those streets that didn't meet that criteria, that arbitrary criteria that was set. And I can get on board if we do our homework and we do it in a way that gives us the information we need. That's it. That's all I'm asking for.
If I can ask a quick question, Zach, what would you feel would be something else that would be needed? I'm hearing that you might need to add something to that criteria. What does that look like?
Well, I wouldn't add anything. I would take it away. And when the item was going here, when we were talking about getting this item on the agenda, one of the things I said was cast the widest net possible. And we didn't do that. So it wasn't cast the widest net possible so that we can accept and maintain every single street, but so we know what we're dealing with. The question was written so tailored that it only produced a handful of streets. And two of them, Joseph and Villa La Vida, were like, hey, we're not gonna do those right now, we're gonna wait. Well, the Villa La Vida, the project on the corner of Villa La Vida is, y'all have been driving past there, nothing's happening. The next property is likely not gonna see development for a significant amount of time, right? So there'll still be that gap. It's unfortunate, but those residents that live on that street, that live back in there, there's apartment homes right next door that they have to drive on that 30 PCI index every single day to get home. And then all the homes back there it's a significant number. It's 1,000 trips a day through there. That's more than all the other streets, significantly more than all the other streets. So all I'm saying is go back, do a thorough look at our streets, and then come back. Like, I can get on board with it if we have the information at hand. If you came and said, hey, if we're gonna rebuild Green Tree, and in 10 years it's gonna need a full replacement, and that's gonna be $8 million. Like, okay, at least we know. We just don't know. We don't know what the concerns are. We don't know what's gonna happen, and that's my issue. And that's it.
Go for it.
Well, first, I just want to say, Councilmember Schwenk, I understand what you're saying, and I absolutely respect what you have said. A few things. As far as rebuilding street, to my knowledge and what was discussed in the subcommittee, we have never had a street that we have accepted into our public maintenance system, even from county, the Meadowview streets, the Santiago streets, the Los Ranchitos streets, all the streets that meet our country road standard, and completely torn down and rebuilt a street. So if we did in fact do that on any of these streets, it would be the first time, to my knowledge, and I could be corrected by our public works team, that we have ever rebuilt an entire street upon acceptance since 1989 in the almost 35-year history of our city. And we do know the conditions of the streets. That's the CPI data. And the mayor has said, and Councilmember Schwenk has said, that these streets may not even need a slurry seal for 5 to 7 years. So if they don't need a slurry seal for 5 to 7 years, and they're in better condition than most of our streets, which was said tonight, that absolutely means that they won't need to be rebuilt in 10 years if they don't even need a slurry seal in 7 years. And I think it's important for Green Tree, for instance, that street is used constantly through a cut-through for a school that's right next door to it. And the developer that built Deodar, it is the city's responsibility to hold the developer accountable to our city standard. And if we say, hey, you can build a street that's not up to our city standard, to get to a development at the end of the cul-de-sac. But we're not going to make you put in an assessment district for the homeowners or the homes that haven't been built there. We're not going to make you put in a CFD. We have no way to hold you accountable to the street maintenance. That was, to my knowledge, the only time in the city of Temecula's history that was done, where a developer built an entire road and we had no mechanism in place for that road to be maintained, which is why it has gone unmaintained for 20 years, 20 plus years. But I think one part I will agree with you on is the wide net, and it's a very specific criteria, and there's a lot to it. But and the criteria is very important for legal standpoints. But it breaks down to a very simple concept to me. It's residential streets, which there's thousands in our city that don't have an HOA or an assessment district or a CFD, and all the HOA, assessment district, and CFD provide is a way for those homeowners to maintain their roads. So they don't have that in place, and they weren't put in place at the time of the development, which is past precedent. It's the only way assessment district, CFDs, or HOAs are put into place. They're never put into fact 2 decades later, after the road has already been built, after they've been driven on by the public, since it's a publicly accessible road for 2 decades. But the one part I would agree with you on is if you wanted to accept more streets, such as Joseph and Villa La Vida, and we all agreed that we didn't want to wait for development to happen, that is something that I would want to look into. The point of all of this is to take care of residents and constituents that haven't been taken care of. And to me, even though it looks very specific in that criteria, and it has to be that way legally, it is a very wide net. And as far as Bristol Lane and Laurel Lane, the reason that they weren't seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, is they're in an HOA. So their HOA, those homeowners pay into the HOA to maintain the road, and when that development was built, they did that so that they can maintain their own roads. For whatever reason, the development at that time said, hey, we want these future homeowners to pay into the HOA fees that maintain their own streets. But again, if we accept these roads that are before us today, because nothing is going to change as far as these roads, that I would hope we still believe that they should be accepted and maintained by the city. We accept them, and then we go back and we look at Bristol Lane and Laurel Lane and any other street. But when an HOA maintained street wants to be accepted, it's different than a non-HOA maintained street wanting to be accepted. For instance, Via El Doloro, which is off, or not Via El Doloro, Diodar, which is at the end of Green Tree, that was built to be a private road. Those residents have to come together and have essentially a vote, even though they don't have an HOA, so it would be similar, I would assume, to Bristol and Laurel Lane. They would have to have an actual vote and bring that vote of the residents to council to be accepted. Where the other streets, Ormsby, Cali Medusa, Green Tree, and Via El Doloro, there's no vote. They've already dedicated the road to the public. They've already been publicly accessible for over 2 decades. They are just waiting to be maintained because they've gone unmaintained for 2 decades. And I think the most important thing is that, for what you said in your previous statement, is that these streets don't need to be rebuilt. And that is proven fact by the CPI data that we have before us, stating that they're not even at the top of the list to be maintained tomorrow, which means they don't have to be rebuilt tomorrow, which means they don't have to be rebuilt for a decade, because if they did, they would have to at least be slurry sealed in the next 5 to 7 years. So that's where I stand. I personally would be willing to look at Bristol and Laurel Lane and any other street that believes they should be maintained, and we can give them an adequate answer on why they shouldn't be maintained, or we look into accepting them into our public maintenance network. But as far as where I stand today, I still think that we should move forward with the acceptance of these 4 streets, and then we can always, again, we're going to reconvene this subcommittee no matter what, because we still have commercial streets to go through. We can go back and look at Joseph and Villa La Vida and Bristol and Laurel Lane and any other streets that we may have missed. But to me, we didn't miss any streets that met that very wide net criteria, and I would like to see this move forward today.
Yes, Mr.
So the residents in Harveston didn't choose to maintain their own streets. The city did not accept the streets into the maintenance. Rather than not maintain them, they decided to ask the homeowners to pay for it. That's how it worked. Make me understand how that's okay to spread out road maintenance over 60 homes that are publicly accessible, that connect to Harveston Lake Park. The criteria said it can't have it, has to, if it has an HOA, it doesn't fit. Those residents are paying and have been paying for 20 years. But the entire city, including the 60 residents in Harveston, are going to be paying for Green Tree, Ormsby. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So all I'm saying is, send it back, figure it out. What does this stuff cost? If the residents in Harveston can pay $18.27 a month, why can't other residents do to bring them up to the standard, right? Like, to bring them up. And then it's like, I'm just struggling with it making sense, because you're talking about putting this burden on the entire city. So everyone across the city is going to take this burden of, at some point, like I said, we'll probably be gone. Folks on Green Tree will be like, hey, we don't really like the street. It needs to be maintained. We'd really like a full rebuild. Like, we're going to have to spend that money at some point, right? Because we're not going to let the street deteriorate worse. So we're going to invest in money in it. And those resources have to come from somewhere. That's all I'm asking. I don't understand how it makes sense to exclude someone that has an HOA. Like, you're discriminating. It's like, oh, you have an HOA, you got it. But the folks over here, they don't have an HOA. They could have formed an HOA, right? They could have formed an assessment district. They could. They chose not to. So that's my only ask, is to just send it back and go over it so we can work through this better without just wanting to get this done to get it done.
And just a clarifying question, Councilmember Schwank, on Bristol Lane and those streets, are you saying that the city forced the HOA to be created? So they forced the community to become a private community in which the HOA maintains the road, so those streets are not publicly dedicated anymore? Those are privately dedicated roads that are now an HOA maintained street? That's a genuine question, because I haven't heard of that in our city, where our city forced a community of those 60 homes to create not only an HOA, but to create an HOA that privately maintained their streets that are not dedicated to the public? I'm lost.
Yeah, and this is why I think it needs to go back to subcommittee, because there's a ton of information that we don't
Can I
have.
jump in? Can we ask our staff that's right here?
So those streets in Harveston, although I don't know all of the facts of what happened at the time they were developed, but typically what would happen is if they were planned with something that did not meet the city standard, and in this case I think it's the width, as Councilmember Schwank mentioned earlier, then the city would not agree to take those for maintenance, and yes, require that there would be an HOA form to provide that maintenance. And I would imagine that's what was done for those streets. The difference between that and, say, Green Tree is the homes on Green Tree were all done as custom homes, and so there was no planned development that was done, at the time that those homes on Green Tree were developed. The paving on Green Tree was done as part of that cul-de-sac, that subdivision at the end, and it was required that be paved out to Paba to provide access to that subdivision out to Paba. So that's the difference between those two.
Okay, and just to clarify for me, thank you for that, Pat. To me, that sounds like essentially that HOA, the Bristol Lane HOA, and those 60 homes are the same. They're private roads, and that's what we delineated in the subcommittee, is the difference between public and private roads. That Bristol Lane would be a private road, a private community, a private HOA, similar to a gated community streets.
Technically, that's the way they're classified. Now, they are physically open such that anybody can drive on them.
Yeah, they're not private roads.
Yeah.
And that's, your questioning is confirming why I think it needs to go back to the subcommittee. There's so much out there that we don't know. The question was written in such a way that it omitted a ton of stuff.
Right.
And I think we're getting into some potential issues if we just move this forward and say, oh, well, but we'll go back and look at more. Like, we need to be fiscally responsible when we work through this stuff. And we need to fully understand the impacts. Because if we do this let's just say we do this. It's only 38,000 or whatever the number was. More people will come forward and we'll be here with just another 4 streets and another 4 streets, we need to have the information. If you're gonna go back and look at business streets anyways, we had a gentleman from Wolf Store, you know, the POA out there, and there's some creative ways for them to leverage the land that they own to improve that street. The city shouldn't have to do that. All I'm asking is to send it back to better understand everything we're dealing with. There's things like that y'all didn't know, and I think we should know everything before we vote on something.
I think the last thing I'll say is that every street that came into our public maintenance system after the incorporation and the ones that the county we had to accept when we incorporated, every street that has ever come into our public maintenance system was at one time not accepted. And when we accepted those roads, it was the same as we're accepting if we accept these 4 roads tonight. And there's nothing that's prevented those Bristol Lane homeowners that have an HOA from coming to council before or coming to the city before. And the fact that these 4 streets, in my mind, and like I said on the meeting on the 13th, these were, I guess, an anomaly, right? And in my mind, we created this minority of streets that we found with this this criteria. And what I would say is it's the city's responsibility to maintain these roads. Bristol Lane is already being maintained. Those streets are already being maintained. Even if they're maintained by the homeowners currently, those are being maintained. And what the developer put in at the time is, again, I wasn't around at the time, but whatever was done at that time ensured that those streets would be maintained. The streets before us tonight have gone unmaintained for 20 plus years. Bringing these back to the subcommittee won't change a thing for these streets. And it won't change anyone at any time in any HOA community to come into the city and saying, hey, we want our streets maintained. They can do that at any time. An HOA private community, though, and an HOA community is different. You have to get all of those community members and those residences on board to be accepted into the public maintenance system. These streets before us tonight are not maintained. There is no HOA, there's no CFD, nothing about these streets will change. So if we want to look into Bristol Lane, absolutely we can bring that back and look into Bristol Lane. But whether we accept these streets or not, those residents on Bristol Lane can still come to City Council and say, hey, we want to accept these streets. This isn't the first time we've accepted streets that have been non-accepted into our public maintenance system. This isn't something that's never been done before. Hundreds of resolutions have been before councils in the past 35 years that have accepted streets into the public maintenance systems. This is nothing new. This is just creating maintenance for these streets that have gone unmaintained. So I would say we move forward with these streets, and if we want to, and if those individuals off Bristol Lane want to look at how legally they become maintained by a public maintenance municipality like us, absolutely we'll look into it. Whether or not we accept them is a different category than what we have before us tonight. That's all I have to say. And the 33,000 to me is it's a fiscal responsible number to maintain homeowners' streets that have gone unmaintained for 20 years, and that in my mind, Temecula should have been maintaining this whole time. And that's all I got. I think everyone in the community would agree that sometimes we band together to bring forward individuals, whether it's minorities, and in my mind, the street's a minority group. That's what communities do. They bring forward those that may have been left behind and bring them up to the level of the city maintenance system. These aren't special streets. These aren't better or worse streets. These are just public residential streets that need to be maintained. And to put it off any longer, to me, is the absolute wrong thing to do.
All right, so I'll call for the question. I believe we are, well, we have to have a motion and a second.
Are we going to bring this forward as well? If this does go through, is this something we're still going to continue to look at? I think that's another question.
I think it's essential that we kind of keep looking into what the
I would agree.
street circulation element is in Temecula based on a different criteria, you know, and again, that's my concern. Like the Harveston one, if residents, like thousands of people are using these roads, how is it fair that the burden falls upon those 60 people or whatever? And, I mean, even that one road, what's the one with the apartment complex where the?
Via La Vida.
Via La Vida. I would even like to even look into that one, if there's a way somehow we can bring that up and then somehow create a fee or something that any new development would have to pay for the redoing of that road, because that road is pathetic. It's probably one of the worst roads in Temecula, and a lot of people use it. So I think the roads subcommittee is definitely something that should continue and take a deeper dive as far as, you know, some of these really, really heavily used roads in our city, whether they're unmaintained or they're privately maintained and shouldn't be. I mean, it should be our responsibility as a city if it's being used by basically our city. So.
It isn't, in some ways, it's like, it's the, you know, past councils and even this current council of, you know, being, you know, you had mentioned, you know, some sort of fee or assessment or whatever. I mean, that's my whole point.
Yeah.
That's what I've been trying to say this whole time, is that this development, any development, we should look to, like, any new development that comes in, whether it's Somers Bend, I mean, the CFDs in Somers Bend are massive, right?
Right.
The residents at Somers Bend are paying for those improvements through the CFD, through their property taxes.
But we're taking over the maintenance
Right.
of that.
I'm talking about bringing them up to the city standard,
Yeah.
right? Like, why would we take, and this is, and I don't want anyone to take any offense to this, why would you accept something that isn't a standard?
Right.
Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, the whole point of creating the standard, whether it was the width, the past council was like, hey, we don't like this width, whatever, or whether it's the build. Like, why would we accept a lesser standard? That just is going to increase our burden down the road. I mean, it just is. So,
I would just say these streets are up to our standard. These streets meet the exact same standard that homes in Meadowview have, that homes in Santiago Estates have, that homes in Los Ranchitos have. These ones have just gone unmaintained. And it's not, was it overlooked? We can ask ourselves why haven't they been maintained? But I think we can agree, and staff would agree, that we found documents from 1975 that were not found before. Could those, and they didn't have the dedication. That was one of these reasons these streets weren't maintained. So if the city council at that time didn't have those documents, they wouldn't have accepted these streets. We have everything we need, and they meet our standard to be accepted. And as far as Via La Vida and the fee, it's already in place that when the developer develops that development, those streets will be developed. There's no fee that needs to be it's already in the works for Joseph and Via La Vida. If the developer develops that area and that parcel, in the condition of approval is to bring that road up to the city standard and improve it, and then we are going to accept maintenance. We already talked about that in subcommittee.
But
that's my whole point.
That could be 20 years down the road, though.
But I agree with you. If you want to bring those in, absolutely, let's bring in Via La Vida. I agree. We should bring in everyone that uses those public roads. So if you want to add Via La Vida and you want to add Joseph to the public maintenance network, absolutely. I don't disagree with you by any means.
Right.
So either we accept them or we don't accept them, but I agree that if you want to accept those, absolutely, let's accept those too, because they are publicly utilized. I just thought we came to an agreement that they were going to be developed. If we say, hey, that's 20 years down the road, I agree with you. They should be absolutely publicly accepted today. And if you want to add Joseph and Via La Vida to those public maintenance systems, absolutely.
Well, I would say let's worry about what's in front of us right now, and then we're gonna keep the subcommittee going, and we'll continue to look at those two and any others that pop up and deal with those accordingly. But right now, I say do we have a second?
Oh.
Okay. So you.
Can we, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I ask one thing, and then just, maybe I need
Sure.
clarification on the motion or whatever the motion was. Just a couple things. One, I don't think I can resolve the philosophical difference between you, Zach, and you, Brendan. It's a philosophical
Yeah.
debate.
Right.
And I don't have a solution for you. But what I will tell you from the staff's perspective, best practices that we've operated under for the last 30 years with respect to development paying its fair share for roadway and roadway maintenance, and some of the streets are being mentioned tonight. I think undoubtedly that is still our position, for what it's worth. Letting developers off the hook, I don't necessarily agree with. And as Peter and I were talking, there are legal mechanisms, but they're not complicated to go down that path if you want to let future development off the hook. Now, yes, you must wait an indefinite period of time. I get it. But that's another whole staff's perspective would be to let the development pay as it comes in and be conditioned appropriately for the maintenance of those roads. But I can't resolve the philosophical difference.
Okay.
And I wasn't clear on what the actual motion was. I don't think the clerk was as well.
I will clarify that.
Okay.
Wonderful.
The motion is to direct staff to prepare city council resolutions to accept the following streets into the city maintained system, as is Cali Medusa, Green Tree Road, Ormsby Road, via El Delora.
And was there a second part to that motion that I was hearing and about with respect to going back to subcommittee for an
Yes.
additional review?
Yes.
Yes. Councilmember Swain.
Was there a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so before we vote, because it's electronic, I'm going to oppose this.
Yeah.
Just on the fundamental difference that we're not doing our homework on this. We're pushing this through when we could go back and take our time and spend a year on it. I don't need to say much more. I won't say any more, but I'm going to oppose it, not because I don't want to maintain city streets, but I fundamentally disagree with the approach and the way that we're doing it.
So again, for clarification purposes, the motion is by Mayor Pro Tem Kalfas. The second is by Councilmember Alexander to go ahead and accept the subcommittee's recommendation as is, and then go ahead and prepare the appropriate as recommendation as is, and then go ahead and have the subcommittee look at additional streets for review as well into the city maintained
Along with the
system.
commercial, we're going to be looking at that anyway.
Yeah, the previous direction, including the title of the ad hoc subcommittee, did not differentiate between residential and commercial.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and there's the start voting screen. Mr. Mayor, it passes 3-1.
All right. So let's go to item number, items for future agendas.
I have one. It's not technically an item, but it's a presentation. We've consistently heard housing. Our affordable housing or housing subcommittee just had a pretty robust presentation by Luke and his team. I'd like the city council, assuming there's no objections, to direct the city manager to bring that to next council as just a maybe 10-minute presentation for housing. We can continue to have that conversation. Okay.
I'll go ahead and, so the motion was by Councilmember Schwank, and the second was from Councilmember Alexander. The vote screen is up. Councilmember Alexander, I'm assuming yay?
Yeah. My screen's gone.
And that's unanimous.
All right. So do we have a city manager's report?
Oh, there we go.
Nothing further.
City attorney?
Nothing
report.
tonight.
All right. That being said, we are adjourned.